Comments from the public. Members of the public may address the board on any items within the jurisdiction of the board by submitting presentation requests to the secretary. Members of the public are strongly urged not to mention personnel by name and are reminded that they do not have immunity from legal action if personnel are named. The board may limit each speaker to 3 minutes with a total of 20 minutes per topic. So, Mary, would you?
All right, the first speaker for tonight is Miss Kathy Nelson.
No, that one it says not.
She does have, I just want to put it out there, she does have a statement on here. She does not need this read aloud, but would like us to consider these questions tonight. Each board member has a copy of this in front of them, so they can consider them questions. So I just wanted Ms. Nelson to know that.
Thank you.
The next one is from Faith Hahn. Dear Sally, I know you are probably flooded with opinions for the board meeting, but we, my husband and I, feel that we would be remiss if we did not say something. I have almost every condition they say to be aware of, including possible surgery next week. Yet I came in every packet pickup for the TK through second. So far, us to say that school should resume is what some may say is risky. We do not feel that way. We believe it is best for all students to be back in school in whichever way that it can happen. My husband, Tom, and others that I will not speak for, feels that the quality of work turned into him was poor for the most part. Up to 50% did not attempt any of the work. 30% or more did not attempt most of the quizzes and tests. Tom even gave days when he would be available in person at WES or RHS for them to hand in work or seek help. For this reason, we want to emphasize that students should be at school, especially in the beginning, to understand the procedures and expectations that we have. In my class, the parents handed in the work, but did not always finish what they asked, like rough drafts, pre-writing, penmanship, etc. Thank you for presenting our view at the board meeting. Sincerely, Tom and Faith Hahn. The next one is from Miss Lydia Vasquez. There's a litany of questions. Here's a few questions I have for the school board to consider when determining fiscal reopening of our school. I will just read those questions and we will refer those to the superintendent to answer, okay? The first question, if a teacher tests positive for COVID-19, are they required to quarantine for 2 to 3 weeks? If they're sick, leave covered, pay. What about the staff, nurses that clean our facilities, those that work in cafeterias, etc.? Question 2, if that teacher has 5 classes a day with 30 students each, do all 150 of those students need to then stay home and quarantine for 14 days? Question 3, do all 150 of those students now have to get tested? Who's paying for the test? Are they happening at school? How are parents being notified? Does everyone in each of those students' families need to get tested? Who pays for that? Where is the nearest testing facility, and how will the school provide transportation? What if someone that lives in the same house as the teacher tests positive? Does the teacher now have to take 14 days off work to quarantine? Is that time covered, paid? Question 5, where is the district going to find substitute teacher who will work in a classroom full of exposed, possibly infected students for substitute pay, for what we pay the substitutes? Question 6, substitute teachers in multiple schools, what if they are diagnosed with COVID-19? Do all kids in each school now have to quarantine and get tested? Who is going to pay for that? Question 7, what if a student in your kid's class tests positive? What if your kid tests positive? Does every other student that the teacher they have been exposed to gets quarantined? Do they all get notified who's infected and when? And the last question, how will it affect students and faculty when the first teacher in their school dies from COVID-19? The first parent of a student who brought it home, and then the first child. The answer may not be stated tonight, but these are a few of the questions that many teachers and staff members might be concerned about. Signed, Ms. Vasquez. So like I said, all these questions will be considered from Ms. Nelson, Ms. Vasquez, and thank you to Mr. and Mrs. Hahn for providing inputs.
The next one we have is from Carla Serrano. She says, hello. We do not believe that it is a wise decision to expose the children and their family members. Allowing kids to go back to school would indirectly and directly provide unnecessary exposure to the virus. Except Accepting the kids before the pandemic is contained would show that the funding is more of a priority than the safety of our children and community. The children should be taught virtually until the virus is contained. Thank you. Crystal Morrison. Mine is more of a question than a statement. My concern is for our special ed students and how will the next school year impact them, whether on campus or distant learning. Next is Christy Muncie. Muncie? We will have to use our sick days if we are told to self-quarantine. Once our sick days are run out, will we have to pay out with our pocket for the substitutes? What are the provisions for closing schools, classes if exposure is suspected or confirmed? Thank you, Christy. Dwayne Moore. In regards to the students, teachers, and staff returning to school campuses, what might be the protocol if someone tests positive? Will everyone around quarantine or be tested? And who will pay for the testing? Dr. Robbins?
This comment is from Sabrina Safarati. I don't feel it would be in the best interest for the kids to go back to public setting at the school at this time. I feel the distance learning is what's best for them to protect all of our kids from the coronavirus and any other illness because of the fact that schools require the children to go to school unless they have a fever, diarrhea, or vomiting. They are still required to go to school unless they have any of those symptoms. And it's ridiculous because that is what causes everyone else's kids to get sick, whether or not the kids wear masks, because of the fact that the kids are kids. They're going to touch things and then they're going to touch their faces and eat without washing their hands. There's no sure way to protect kids from getting sick at school. The only safe way for our kids to learn at this time is at home with distance learning. Please think of our kids and what is best for them the safest. This message is from Debbie Sefarati. To whom it may concern, we are concerned about the COVID-19 pandemic. We do not want our kids taking a chance of being exposed to the virus. We already know people who have been infected. The cases have increased. We have been informed that the school district and us are all doing distance learning. We would like that you decide to do distance learning as well. We feel this is the safest choice. Our kids get sick easy and have their own health issues, and we do not want to take a chance in making this worse. We would like to know how the distance learning will be done. Will the teacher video the lesson being taught so that students can see the lesson being done and maybe even be able to pause it or go over it again? Or how will electives be done? Will the teachers make appointments with the students to go over anything a student didn't understand or trouble with it? How do they get their books and laptops? Will the district give internet to those who don't have it? How is the elementary kids going to be taught? If you choose not to do distance learning, will there be options for those who want distance learning for their children? What options are going to be available? And this message is from Caleb Prosser. I apologize, my first didn't send as a subject and my second one had jumbled text. If the school does not resume as normal in the fall, what will the district do to accommodate working families with multiple children that cannot be home to log on and help them do their classes and schoolwork during the day? It is not reasonable to expect working parents to come home at 5 or 6 p.m. and then start schoolwork with their kids. Additionally, what will be provided for those families with multiple kids in different grade levels that do not have access to a computer or multiple computers? if school does return for in-person classes, how will they allow a medical exemption for masks?
Okay, there were a lot of questions asked on the comment section. Many of them were questions. What we would like to do is give the superintendent and the board, a little bit of time to answer those questions. We'll put them up on the website as a Q&A. We'll list the question and the answer to the best of our abilities. We may not have the answers to some of the questions at first, but give us a shot to take the information in, see where we need to go. There was a lot of different questions going a lot of different ways, but we will do our best to get the answers out to the public through the SKUSD website.
On the agenda is report to communication, RTA report, Mr. Coleman.
Well, goodness, I'm on.
Ron.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm glad to be back. I'm sorry it's under these situations. I'm sure you've missed me. And I'm enjoying my quarantine hair and all of that. I try to bring a little bit of levity sometimes, a little bit of lightheartedness, even though we've got a very difficult evening, very difficult decisions to make. And I'm sure the board will take those decisions very seriously. To start off on a positive note, since I haven't been here, I do have a couple of separate things to report. First of all, I let the board know months ago about the RTA Scholarship Fund. RTA awarded $5,000 in scholarships this year to graduating seniors at Roseman High School, also graduating seniors of RTA members. And I wanted to let you know who those fortunate seniors are. Elena Finch received an award or a scholarship of $1,500 from Roseman High School. Kevin Stevenson, who's a graduating senior of our RTA member Jackie Stevenson, also $1,500. Braden Parker from Roseman High School, a scholarship of $1,000. Victoria Gomez, Roseman High School, of $500. And Aaliyah Valenzuela, also a scholarship of $500. I'm not part of the RTA Scholarship Committee. I'm very proud to say that many of these were my former students getting those awards, so I want to congratulate them. Also, separate from this, we have been involved in negotiations with the district, getting started in negotiating our new contract. As you know, our 3-year contract expired June 30th, although it will still be in force until we have a new contract. We've had 2 meetings so far to just get an understanding of each other's proposals. Unfortunately, I'm not sure how soon we'll be able to meet again because we have certainly more pressing issues that are going to take the bulk of our time, but we will continue to work through those items into the fall. Most importantly tonight, I'd like to make a presentation on your decision having to do with our return to school. RTA has been very involved with the superintendent and also the district's cabinet. RTA and CSEA leadership have been involved in also site administration. We've spent a month or probably more, Mrs. Gaines, you can correct me on that, in looking at a variety of models that you're considering tonight. A Google document was created by Gary Jones of CSEA, and all of the stakeholders were weighing in on that document, looking at pros and cons of the different models you're looking at, also raising lots and lots of questions with lots and lots of input. I'm not sure if the board was part of that document or was following along in that document, but I'm sure you've been given much or all of that information. A couple weeks ago, I took that document and then I shared it with the teachers so that they could see everything that was on the table and that was being discussed about the different models as we look at returning to school. Of course, just in the last 2 weeks, things are rapidly changing. So I started this process with my teachers a couple weeks ago, and it's already a little bit out of date, but it will be very applicable to what you're deciding on tonight. I've created a PowerPoint presentation that I want to go through real quickly, or not necessarily real quickly, but there's 11 or 12 slides on here. I'm going to focus on 2 or 3 of them. I took this entire presentation and sat down with Mrs. Gaines last week for about 90 minutes to talk about the contents, so that she had a good understanding of where the teachers are coming from. So again, I shared that Google Doc with all of the teachers so that they could read the information. And then I sent out a survey to the teachers to get their feedback over which model they think would be the most appropriate for the board to adopt. I was amazed at the respondents. I sent it out to the current email list of teachers. There's about 160 or 170 active teachers on that email list, and I got 99 respondents at the last time I took it. There's been a few more respondents since then, but you get an idea that that's a big return in terms of our survey. So hopefully I'll be able to run through this a little bit with you. I know this is really small, so I'm just going to kind of explain it to you, and you'll have to kind of follow along with some of the key topics that I'm going to put out there. Excuse me just a moment while I pull out my copy of this. Basically, I posed 6 or 7 different questions to the teachers about these different models. I did split it up between elementary and secondary because I thought there would be a dynamic difference into the feedback that we get from those 2 different groups. And what you're going to see here in this blue area is what we've been calling the ABAB model. On your board agenda, that would be either plans 1 or 4. And the ABAB model is where the students go 4 days a week. They alternate days. Group A would go to school, for instance, on Monday and Wednesday. Group B would go to school on Tuesday and Thursday, or depending on the distance learning day, Group A would go Monday and Thursday, and Group B would go Tuesday and Friday. So the ABAB model is pretty much the same. The only difference is between plan 1 and 4 is on what day is the distance learning day. And on all of my slides, you can see that ABAB model is in blue here. And because it's done in a pie chart, you can see real quickly that was favored in many of the different instances. In the red is the AABB model. That's where Group A goes 2 days in a row. Then there might be a distance learning day, and Group B goes 2 days in a row. Or Group A goes Monday, Tuesday, Group B goes Wednesday, Thursday, and distance learning is on Friday. But again, students attend 4 days a week. Each group attends 2 days to get instruction. And then we had a variety of other models. Now, I will let the board understand, I did not include Plan 8, which I think on the board agenda, I apologize. Plan 8, that's the one where students return as normal. That's the regular school schedule. That was not included in our survey, quite frankly, because it wasn't on the table at the time, because we cannot follow the CDE or the CDC guidelines for distancing if all the students are in the classroom at once. So that wasn't part of the survey. Also, your Plan 12, which was all distance learning, was not part of the survey. Now, I did get some feedback about those options in the comments section. You got some feedback already tonight in some of the comments that you got. But what we were doing was trying to focus on which model would be best for students while we can provide social distancing as much as possible. Keep in mind, with 15 kids in my classroom, there's no way they're going to be 6 feet apart. They'll probably be 4 feet apart. And that's middle school students who I can keep in place. Elementary students, that's a whole different ballgame. But I asked, now I posed, well, let me go over the last couple of options here. There was another model that we were considering, which was 1 week on, 1 week off. I call it AAAA. So Group A would go 4 days consecutively, and then there would be a distance learning day, and then next week Group B would come in. Now, I don't see that, I don't believe, as one of the board's options on your agenda, but at the time I put out this survey a couple weeks ago, that was one of the ones we were considering, basically 1 week on, 1 week off. And then we had this, what was called just in the Google Doc, called Plan 10, which was again kind of a 1 week on, 1 week off plan without any distance learning, and it was a rotating schedule. So Group A might go 3 days in a row, then Group B would go the next 2 days, and then the next following week, the next rotated. And that was an interesting idea that was thrown out there, so we included that because it was part of our Google Doc. So I wanted to go through all of the plans that were part of my survey, but now the important part is what were the questions that the teachers were responding to, and you can see that here. Which model do you believe would be best for student instruction? And at both the elementary and the secondary, there was a strong preference for the AB model, your plans 1 or 4. Basically, this is a 2-to-1 ratio. I know these numbers are really small. This is 63% here, and this is 24% here. So more than twice as many respondents felt the AB model was better over the second place model, AABB. Now, all of them are based on that, and I don't want to move on if you're having any questions about what models I'm referring to. Okay? So in the first question was, which do you believe is best for student instruction at both the elementary and the secondary? It's about a 2-to-1 ratio of the AB model over the AABB. And then a few votes in the other areas. Okay?
Jim, is that on secondary, that gold, is that the week, the AAA, BBB?
Yes, that's 1 week on, 1 week off.
Okay.
Correct. Now, I do want to put a little caveat in here. I have a little bit of a misprint. It said ABAB is plans 1 and 3, when in actuality it was plans 1 and 4. I had a little misprint there. I put that out for members ahead of time. They were aware of it. They knew what I was talking about. I'm confident that the data is accurate based on the responses that I got. Okay? So that was the first question. And now we're going to see kind of the same thing posed to teachers 3 different ways. Next is, which model do you believe would be best for student or staff safety? Because, of course, that's extremely important. You can see that it's still the majority like the ABAB model, but here is where the AABB gets a little bit of a stronger response because, of course, with 2 days on and then 2 days off, you've only got one group for 2 days and then another group for the next 2 days. And, of course, the board's making an important decision. We need to balance what's important for student instruction, extremely important, and also student and staff safety. I got to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, before I move on, I want to make sure we all understand, because of what I see in the news and we all read everything going on around us, student safety is incredibly important, but let's not forget staff safety as well. We all talk about students cannot transmit or contract the virus, or if they do, they're asymptomatic, they're less likely to be hospitalized or to succumb from the virus, but that's not true of staff. And for somebody like me getting ready to turn 60, and people like you heard from Faith Hahn with her underlying conditions, it's a giant concern. So which model do you believe would be better for student and staff safety? Again, you can kind of see the AB model is preferred. Next, which do you believe would be best for teacher planning and preparation? Isn't that an old Boy Scout saying, without prior planning prevents poor performance? And that's really important here. This is going to be extremely hard no matter what model we teach under, whether it's all distance, total distance learning, or a hybrid program. The instruction is going to be phenomenally difficult because we were able to limp through things last spring pretty well. I would go against what you heard with one of the emails. I thought my students did an outstanding job finishing the year and gaining a lot of knowledge. I even ran into one of my parents at Costco today who expressed that his son definitely gained a lot of knowledge with what I did with them. But starting out the year and doing the whole year with these hybrid models is going to be extremely difficult. So the planning and preparation and how that's going to work best is absolutely vital. And so that's why that teacher planning day is so important, and I'll be touching on that here in a moment. But the next question is the one I think you want to focus in on now, overall. Putting all of those 3 different previous questions together. Overall, which model do you believe is best for the district to adopt? And again, we've got that 2-to-1 ratio at both the elementaries and the secondary levels, that the ABAB model with distance learning either on Wednesday or Friday would be best. And again, I know you can't see these exact numbers here. If you want me to touch on those, I can. Mrs. Gaines has them. Any questions up to this point?
Now, when you say teacher planning day, is that a teacher planning day or a distance learning day?
It's a distance learning day, but it's going to be vital for teacher planning.
Okay.
We're going to be doing both of those things. Yes, at middle school, I'll be meeting with my students on that day, creating office hours, mostly to answer questions as opposed to giving new instruction, but letting students know where it is that, or being able to give them guidance in what it is that they've done, either through email or Google Classroom or Zoom meetings or some other online type of meeting program. I can do that. Honestly, our elementary teachers, the whole idea of distance learning is a completely different ballgame, especially in early elementary. The idea of distance learning and instruction through distance is minimal. I had the great fortune of not only doing my distance learning with students back in March and April and May, but I got to watch my wife, who teaches second grade at West Park, doing the same. And so I was able to get a real feel for what it might be like for middle school and high school, but also early elementary and middle elementary. For our elementary teachers, that distance learning day is going to be huge in terms of planning and preparation, where they can take what they found, how their students have progressed during the week in the 2 days that they've met with them, and plan for the following week so that they can meet the needs of their students. And so they can, and also so they can identify the students who are struggling with the distance learning and reaching out through a variety of ways that we can keep those students connected in those days that they're off. And in one way, a little bit less dependent on their parents. But of course, we know that 6-year-old first grader is going to be very dependent on their parents, especially since the kindergarten first, second graders, and even really the third graders, they don't have the devices from the district to use. Fourth and fifth graders do get devices, but they're novices at using them. So it's important we really think about what's going to happen with our elementary students as we drive our best decision here.
Okay. I just want to make sure, because we were stressing teacher planning, that distance learning would be accessible on that day.
Absolutely.
And how do you envision secondary prep periods? Is that a distance opportunity for the students or a hands-off prep time for the teachers if they're not subbing based on people going home with temperatures and stuff like that? So how do you envision that going, Jim? You're the expert here.
I'm not the expert. I'm figuring this out as we go. And we had a lot of great questions, and once the board adopts a certain model, that's when I'll be expecting to use up a lot of Mrs. Gaines's time, and she'll probably want me to give up my vacation time so that we can try to start answering many of these questions. My prep period is going to be used in a variety of ways. I expect that I'll probably be able to hold some office hours during that prep period. I expect I'll be doing some planning and prepping during that period. I hadn't even really considered that, so that's why it's a really great question. What am I going to do during my prep period? If it's like what I do now, it's going to be work my tail off, planning, and I could incorporate with that the meeting of students, or what I found in April and May, tons of emails to respond to, both directly to the students or responding to them through Google Classroom or responding to the parent.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I was going, because that's probably one of the biggest complaints we'll get. Why is it taking so long for a teacher to get back once we're back in the classroom? When we were all teachers were off and teaching distance, they had a little more opportunity, a little more targets of opportunity to answer those. Will that be used as we go forward? Because that'll probably be one of the biggest heartbreak if we go that route, that'll probably be one of the biggest heartburns that the parents have, how long it's taken for people to get back to them or the student to answer questions. So I was just curious there.
I was blown away about how busy I was during the distance learning with emails, trying to answer those parents' questions. But it was maybe from about 20 parents as opposed to We need to find a way to draw more of these people in and making sure they're active. But I was very fortunate. I had almost zero students not participating. I understand I have a little bit of a different program than all teachers, but my students were very engaged and very active during that distance learning time. Our elementary teachers, they don't have a prep period other than the 30 minutes before school, where they're getting ready for the day.
Yes, sir.
That's a guaranteed prep period. They're really going to need that distance learning day for both distance learning and prepping for the next day, and a lot of PLC time, getting together with their group and understanding how can we attack the problems that we're seeing so that we can help our students in every way possible.
Okay, sorry for
No,
sidetracking you. I just
I'm here tonight to answer as many questions as I can. I don't have an agenda other than what my teachers have told me is their preference and what I think is going to be best for students.
Jim, I got a question.
Yes.
I got this distance learning. It's gonna be tough. We got a tough decision to make. Our school's in trouble, I believe, but I'm really concerned on the younger classes. Your wife's a second grade teacher. Can she see I just feel that this kindergarten student, this person, second grade student is going to be devastated by being out of the school for this amount of time because they're going to miss out the social skills that come along with it. There's so many skills that they're going to miss out on, and the instructions, the one-on-one instructions. What does your wife think about their students advancing at this short period of time? We've only been in a short period of time, but we're talking about going into maybe for a long period of time here. What does she think going to happen to her second grade going to third grade? Does she think they're going to be okay? Are they going to be back a year? This could really hurt these students.
Let me make sure I answer your question. Are you referring to a total distance learning model where students are not at school at all? Or are you talking about one of these hybrid models where students are in school twice a week?
The high grade, because we have to do something to get them back. But this high grade, I really want, I believe kindergarten, first and second and third grade is very important for students. Very, very. That's the foundation. And them being out even school 2 days a week. That's not.
Well, I agree. It's a huge challenge. And she is my sounding board. I ask her all sorts of questions. And as our most senior teacher and an outstanding teacher, I think she gives me a lot of good insight that I can use. With an ABAB model, she feels that you can focus on the day that you've got your students, especially if you're focusing the entire day, not completely, but you're spending a lot of your time on math and English language arts, ELA. The nice thing about the elementary ELA curriculum is that it's a lot of nonfiction based curriculum. It's not just fiction stories. It's a lot of nonfiction. It's like 75% nonfiction that incorporates elements from both science and social studies. So the ELA curriculum helps pick up those other subject areas. So the teacher can focus a great deal of time on math and ELA on the day that they're in school. And then on the next day, have that packet of work for the students to support what they learned in class. It's as I described it when I was talking to people, it's a very common teaching model. You give students instruction and you have guided practice, and then you give them independent practice. And this happens at first and second grade as well as middle and high school. And so that ABAB model fits very well because the day I have my students, I can focus on those skills that are important with the instruction and the guided practice. And then I can give them that information they need to work mostly independently at home, especially in those early elementary grades, in the independent practice. And then they come back to me the next day and I can see their work and get that immediate feedback and know as a teacher whether I'm ready to move forward as I plan or whether I have to hit the brakes and redo what it was, we redo some of the topics we did when they were with me. And so while it's certainly not the best way to try to teach students, she feels it's a model that could fit. But she and I, and I've heard from a number of teachers, I'm sorry, Mr. Bennett, we're scared to death to come back to school. I am scared to death to come back to school. My daughter lives in New York. My 60th birthday is the end of this month. She has made plans to fly out here, and I won't let her come see me. That's how scared I am of this, and of going to school and not seeing just 15 students in my class, but 75 students every day because I have 5 classes. And I have not only myself, my wife, but I've heard from a number of teachers, and we heard it today in a couple of comments, about the sheer terror of returning at all. And that may be mandated upon us no matter what we decide tonight. What I learned in watching Tony Thurman's presentation today is he feels, again, local districts need to make their plans and make their decisions. They also need to have a contingency plan. And I'm sure you're aware of that. So the board may make a decision tonight, knowing in 2 weeks we may be forced into a different decision. But right now, long way to answer your question. My wife thinks it's a very difficult way to teach students, but she sees it as manageable. I do know the TK and the kindergarten teachers have come to me with that real dilemma. And knowing that the enrollment numbers are down right now at kindergarten, and asked, is it possible for them to see all their students 4 days a week? And while I think that's very problematic to do it with just the kindergarten students and the TK students, I understand where they're coming from. There's going to be a severe ripple effect with families and other students and things along those lines. And what happens if the numbers grow and now there's 18, 20, 22 in a class? We can no longer social distance. But I did talk to Mrs. Gaines about that, and it's certainly something worth exploring. But I think starting certainly at first grade, and talking to my wife in second grade, is something that's manageable. Certainly as the kids that go up in age, it's manageable. It's certainly not like teaching 5 days a week, but it also keeps us as safe as possible. We have those great questions about what happens when somebody tests positive and there needs to be a sub. And that's, everything comes to a screeching halt at that point. But those are questions to answer later. But we need to focus on overall, the teachers that responded, about 100 of them, in a 2-to-1 ratio, saying the ABAB model would be best for student instruction, best for teacher planning, which aids in student instruction. Then was the other part of it. Okay, if we go to one of these models, which day of the week would be best for the distance learning and also for teacher planning and preparation? This one is not which model, but which day is best for distance learning. Is it Wednesday or Friday? And it is the Friday that is the red. What's strange here is you got 55 respondents at elementary and 44 respondents at secondary, and yet the percentages were exactly the same. Mathematically, that's like impossible. I just found it incredible, but it was. But here, and I agree with this, that if we have the distance planning on Friday, I will have seen how my students progress throughout the week, and then I can make my plans for next week. Can I move forward? Do I have to hit the brakes and do some scaffolding with my students and support where they're at? Which which models, which presentations did work well with them? I have the new joy at Tropico. We're gaining brand new curriculum at math and ELA. Curriculum I'm learning about and I'm not familiar with. Same with the students, and that's going to be a variable in itself. I will say the math curriculum lends itself beautifully for distance learning. Once I figure out how do I fit these components together, that works for me and works for the students, and then teach them how to use those components. So overwhelmingly, the Friday day for distance learning got a majority of the votes. Then, because there had just been some beginning talk about going total distance learning, at that time, Mojave I had read that Mojave had voted to go to distance learning, even though I don't know that that was really on the table at that time. I know Palmdale now has voted to do that. Of course, we know about UTLA and San Diego and all those. Is it feasible for us to start the year distance learning? Of course, you saw what was important here is that elementary says no, it's really not feasible to do all distance learning. Secondary says, yeah, I think I could manage. But, we probably need to be consistent within the group. There were a couple comments about the importance of what we decide to support our youngest learners. As you brought up, Mr. Bender, what's really going to work for those youngest learners? And, starting off all distance learning would be a giant challenge. It could be done. Whatever we have to do, we'll do. There's no doubt about that. We'll figure it out. You asked about my wife, and I saw the package she sent home that came right from the curriculum that the students understood, they knew how to work with. The first packet that went home with the young kids came from the county, and everybody was honest. But then the teachers had time to start developing their own packets. And I know just in watching what her students were doing and looking through those packets, I was going, wow, what you guys are doing is right spot on to meeting the students' needs and using the curriculum as your guideline for doing that. And she got, in second grade, she got a vast majority of students participating. They all participated some, and most of them participated fully at the time. So it's possible. It's certainly not what's best. And I've taken way too much of your time. There's a couple more slides that I included. I took a lot of the comments that were sent to me, and I tried to grab onto the ones that, a variety of them, not necessarily one-sided. I tried to give a nice cross-section of the different opinions that people had. I shared those with Mrs. Gaines. I've given her a chance so that she's had, some of that direct feedback so that she can make her recommendation to the board. In closing, I wanted to bring, Mrs. Gaines asked me to bring data. And that's what I went out to do, is to bring just raw data, not my data. I have one vote in there. And my wife has one vote in there. Everybody, we have 99 votes. So it's, she asked for raw data, and I tried to provide it as effectively as I could to give some useful information. But overall, based on the majority of my respondents, including the counselors, because they're part of my bargaining unit, RTA would recommend that students attend 4 days in 2 groups. Group A would attend on Mondays and Wednesdays. Group B would attend on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I talked to Mrs. Gaines a month ago about getting ed services busy right now, lining up those families so that all of the children of the same family are in Group A or Group B. I'm sure most families would like that. Maybe some would rather not. I don't know. But also from the survey, distance learning on Friday, that would be the preference. So on your board agenda, this would be Plan 4. One aspect to that is if distance learning is on Friday, we know that we have minimum days on Wednesdays. Of course, we would negotiate with the district to change the calendar. We can't afford that loss of learning time on minimum days. So those minimum days would get pushed to the distance learning days, which really wouldn't affect anything because minimum days are designed for students to leave early and teachers to do planning and preparation. Teachers would still be doing their planning and preparation, whether it's a minimum day or a regular day. It really wouldn't change anything there. I've also developed a memorandum of understanding about this entire work environment for returning to school under any of the environments. Basically the guidelines meeting CDE requirements for returning to school in person, whether it's 2 days a week, 4 days a week, or 5 days a week. What are those guidelines that the district, we would like the district to meet? How are we going to approach it if it's a hybrid model that you're voting on? How would we approach it if it's a 5-day distance learning? I sent Barbara the MOU today. It's just a draft. It's something that's going to change quite a bit. But it's something we're going to be talking toward once the board makes their decision, and we can now start answering some of those questions. So, goodness gracious, see what happens when I'm not here for a couple months? I've got way too much to talk about. But I appreciate the board's time as you're discussing this. If you would like me to interject, please ask. I know it doesn't follow the rules of the board meeting, but I'd like to give you my input if you'd like it.
Jim, can I ask you an unpopular question?
Sure.
And all the arrows can come at me, but I know in the past you received list of employees that, my concern with Friday, and I think you know where I'm going, is that a lot of times people take advantage and make it a 3-day weekend. You've got lists in the past of teachers that have abused that, correct?
I get attendance lists. I
Yes.
don't know which individual
Okay.
teachers.
But it happens. Do you foresee that as a problem with us opening the door for that? I'm not saying 100%, but do you see that as a problem?
I think that,
And like I said, I'll take all the bullets for this, but I got to ask that question because I know that it's happened in the past.
Barbara and I talked about that. It's a work day. And teachers are expected to be at work. If they can't be at work, they have within their contract guidelines as to what it is about taking the day off. And those guidelines would still be in effect.
Okay.
I can't believe how hard I had to work without students, with as much as teachers are gonna have to do. And I did get the question but that's just popped in my mind. I did get a question from a handful of teachers that said, would teachers be required to attend on that distance learning day? Because they've got their own child care needs. And I respect that. That's a challenge they're going to have to face if their child is in this district or another district, what schedule they're on. And Barbara and I talked about that, and she was pretty clear. Teachers will be expected to be at school and to work on those days. We would have to negotiate something different in our MOU. And of course, Barbara would have to agree to it in the MOU, and then the board would have to vote on it and agree to it.
Okay.
If it's anything different.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
Well, I have some questions, but we're not at that point yet.
Okay. All right.
I will wait
so-
for my questions when we get to that.
Okay, so now we go to CSEA report, and there's not a report from CSEA. Is that correct?
Correct.
CPO report, Mr. Barth.
Evening, thank you. We all have the same topic to talk about at this point, but just to draw attention, and I know it seems to be a frequent topic of attention, is to draw attention to our facilities. Really limited staff, crew, groundsmen and the maintenance guys, and they're doing a lot of work at Raleigh in particular. I have to call him out, he's on his own right now, leading the department, and we've got Prop 39 wrapping up. We've got kindergarten classrooms grant kicking off and trying to steamroll and meet our deadlines in October. We've had unexpected gas line leaks and water line leaks, and it's touched every campus, and he's stayed on top of it, and he's done it not only professionally, but he's done it to the letter of code everywhere, and it's nice to have that. He's doing other things like not only trying to ramp up for getting school back in order, whatever that may look like, doing a great job with rehabilitating the athletic facilities. Our football field and our basketball courts are in really bad shape. He has scheduled the basketball courts to be refinished, to not just reconditioned but done, and the bleachers in the high school are being repaired. They are not pulling in all the way. The football field at the high school is pretty bad. So he's pulling together for me several different options for how we might work on that. For the field's condition, the ideal solution would be no football and redo the field. It's actually at that condition, and so we're going to try and figure out how we get a field that meets player needs if that happens, and then look into the future for how we'll continue the process of repairing that field, because it is a significant issue. And today we had a CBO meeting countywide, and the rules are changing. Mr. Palmer referenced that conditions are changing, and which means rules are changing, guidance and advices are changing, and so I'm finding myself spending a lot of time in continuous learning mode for more than anything else, trying to keep pace. We've been given codes for how to track money that have been changed already, and so we have some rework to do in the accounting system for that. And we have to do a 45-day budget revision, and that process is underway. We're starting with looking at just the revenue side and making sure we get that right. Some of the money we were told would be very unrestricted, and it is in terms of the parameters of how we might spend it. We have to tell our story correctly, and there are potential audits of that money for 3 years, which we didn't know about. So fortunately, we're hearing about it now. We can put the systems in place so that if none of us is around 3 years from now, there'll be files dedicated to telling the story of what we did with COVID-related funds from the federal government and the state, and we won't lose money at that point, should they not be in place. All unexpected, different scenarios, and we're in it together, but people are coming together and doing what they need to do, and I appreciate the fact that they're there helping and doing what we need to do without too many sighs and eye rolls. So it's nice to have a team that works together. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. White. Next is Associate Superintendent, Ms. Hargis.
Good evening, and thank you all for tuning into our meeting tonight. Ed Services is a little bit busier this week. We've had quite a few new students that are enrolling, and that is, TK through 12th grade. So we have had numerous new students. We expect to get busier as we've had a lot of phone calls as to, what does next year look like? So we anticipate that as a decision is made, families will be making their decision, and we will get much busier. We also have data confirmation that's open. So we have Anna, who is busy with enrollments, and then we have April, who spends time over here in the boardroom with parents, helping them to get that data confirmation, printing things out for them. So we are becoming a much busier place. We also, Dan Wexler and I are working together to get the trainings set for the new teachers. The new teachers will be reporting April 3rd through the 7th. So he's been working on the new curriculum, as Jim mentioned. TMS does have a new curriculum for language arts and math. So Dan is kind of heading that up for Tropico. We also have some ARIES training that the new teachers will go through, and that's grade book, attendance, and those kinds of things. Also, System 44, Read 180, they've gone through an upgrade in their system, so we will be contacting administrators and inviting those teachers that participate in those programs to participate in some Zoom trainings with the Hoot and Mifflin group. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have our Superintendent, Ms. Gaines.
Thank you. I just too want to welcome everyone. It's so nice to hear that we have so many community members in our meeting this evening. That's great to see. This is a very important night, and I welcome everyone. I also want to say that Dr. Cynthia Bolton, our new assistant principal at Tropico, is now reporting to her new site every day. I met with her the other day, and I think she's going to be a real, she's going to fit in perfectly out there with Mr. Adams and the rest of the team. And she's really looking forward to getting the year started, and she's so excited to be here in Southern Kern. I wanted to introduce her this evening, but in lieu of the governor's changes, hopefully at an upcoming meeting soon, I'll be able to invite her for everyone to get to meet her.
Thank you, Ms. Gaines. Board communications. Can we start with you, Mr. Bender?
I'm glad we have some people tuned in, and it is a very important night. We got some tough decisions. This virus is a real thing that we need to really consider. So unfortunately, I wish that was the only thing we really had to consider to make our decision. There's so many other things that people just aren't aware of, and I wasn't aware of it until I become a board member. And you just got to look at everything. I wish it was just as easy as we all say what's best for the student. I wish it was that easy. Then the decision would be easy to make. But we have to look after our whole school district, the teachers, everybody. So it's going to be a tough decision. And, but I know our teachers will pull us through because you are the front line. You're going to be the front line. We have to put our faith and trust in you guys because you are the educators. And I really thank all of our teachers. And I know it's going to be tough on them any way we go. But just have faith, and I believe we're going to get through this.
Mr. Jones?
Yeah, this is going to definitely be a tough decision. I have a lot of questions that will be asked a little bit later. But again, we have to make the decision of what's best for the students, our staff. I want to really thank all our CSEA members that have been just working tirelessly, feeding kids, disinfecting. Drove by the bus barn the other day and I saw everybody over there just working their butts off, getting everything ready to be ready for the kids that will be busing and all that. So there's a lot of different things we got to be prepped for. And then everything could change next week. And whatever decision we make today may be just for nothing. So hopefully, whatever decision we make, we'll be able to use for a little bit, and then hopefully it'll change to the better, where we can keep moving forward and maybe before the semester is over, it'll be over and we'll be back to school normal. That would be the wish that I would have, that we'd go back to being normal. But I don't know when that's going to happen. So anyways.
Dr. Robinson?
Well, I have a plan that I developed for when we do have all the kids back in school. It's not one that anybody's seen, but basically it involves separating our classrooms into quadrants with the barriers in between each quadrant and having a teacher area in the middle so that all the materials that each student needs would be in their quadrant and they would only be exposed to the people in their group. It would come in together. They would, each one of these squares is a 3 by 3 foot square, kind of a personal space with a space in between. But by lining them up around the outside of the room and having barriers so that they could be between there, and so you'd have maybe bookcases or something, and then plexiglass or some other barrier for that. So the students would line up with their group, come in with their group. This group would come in first, sit down. This group would come in and sit down, same over here, and then they would not interact with any of the other groups. The teacher would then have access from the center to each of the groups where someone could come up and ask a question or something to the teacher. And each person has to protect themselves by washing their hands and wearing masks and whatever they can do. But it's just something that I came up with that eventually we're all going to have to get back into our classroom. And so I came up with this plan. It would also involve having students stagger their start times. So one grade level would come on campus, get their temperature checks, go into their classrooms, and then the next grade level, so that you have less students on the campus at one time. So you would be starting, maybe say at Tropico, 6th grade would start, in 5 minutes they'd go in to their classroom, and then 5 minutes later, 7th grade would go to their classrooms, and then 5 minutes later, 8th grade would go to their classrooms, and we'd just stagger nutrition times and all those things, just to try to eliminate having as many students walking around on campus as possible. And so by distancing and having contact with fewer students in the classroom, and by having fewer students in contact walking around on the campus, they would have contact with less people. So it's a distancing plan. And then I wrote a statement that is my personal opinion. And so because it was really important, I wrote it out. So today we are taking steps to determine what the next school year will be like. We've been given guidelines to follow by the state and the county, but governments do not educate children. Communities educate children. Parents are their first teachers, and our school system can only help build on the foundations that have been laid in the child's years at home. Children's experiences with family, friends, media, and others influence how our society develops. No matter what the district decides or what our policies are, parents are the ones who must choose the best education for their children. Some parents may decide to keep their children at home and continue with distance learning despite the district's decisions. And now that the governor has come out with, his new things, we may not have a choice about what we do. Like everyone's saying, it changes every time we turn around every week. But our survey of parents said that nearly 70% of parents want all students back in school. That's every day. And I agree with that. If we continue with the current state guidelines, I don't believe that our children will get the education that they need. The current models will not give our children the time they need with their teachers to learn what they need. Only time will tell if my opinion is correct. But I am only one voice in this community. As a board member, my voice is a vote. I hope that I represent many people, because that's my job, to represent people out there. The governor, the State Department of Education, Kern County Superintendent of Schools, Superintendent Gaines, and other district management, and all the board members together must come to a consensus. So my voice is just one of many, and the decision that the board makes as a whole, along with Superintendent Gaines, will be the one that I stand by. It is the board's job to help support parents, teachers, principals, classified staff, district personnel, and the superintendent, and do it on budget. The board is like a rudder that determines the course, but it is all of the other people that will see their children actually get educated. I pray that we will have the wisdom to do what is best for our children. but the health of our children and community is more than keeping us from getting COVID-19. Dr. Benjamin Linus, I'm not sure, who's an infectious disease doctor, an epidemiologist, a parent, and on a reopening committee for his school district in Pennsylvania, wrote an article on July 9th, 2020, and he said, a discussion of school closures that focuses only on COVID-19 and not on all education is incomplete. There are real risks to keeping our children at home. In fact, the risk of staying at home are in many ways clearer than the risk of returning to school. One study using statistical models projects major losses in math performance if we continue with remote learning until 2021. Perhaps more compelling than statistics, however, is simple common sense. On any given day, it's hard to point to the loss of learning from home. At the same time, we all agree that education is essential. If we keep our kids at home for another school year, they will have missed 12% of their total education. I cannot identify the specific losses from that much absence, but I am confident that there is a cost to missing that much school. For perspective, missing 12% of school time is the same as missing 22 days of school in a single year. Further, the losses will not be equal. The COVID-19 slide will likely be the greatest among the socially vulnerable, such as children with learning disabilities and those whose situation at home is not conducive to homeschooling. And I ran into a family, his Hispanic family, they're English language learners, and the high school son, there were 4 children in their family. The high school son said that the hotspot did not work in his community, and he contacted here and there wasn't anything that could be done about it, and he failed all of his classes. He said the other kids had packets, so they didn't fall behind, but he was very disappointed because there was no way he could access the online things. So we do not know what will happen when we reopen schools. All we can do is try to prepare for it. We will check temps, disinfect, wash our hands, and anything that we can to help protect ourselves and others. But let's face it, some students have support at home and the resources that they need to succeed no matter what, but others do not. Raising a generation that is afraid of becoming in contact with people is detrimental to their social and emotional health. Living isolated from others, economic problems, and stress at home will all affect how our children develop. English language learners will not have the models they need to progress in English. Very young children will need consistency and repetition to learn the many foundational skills that they need. So right now we have no great choices, but the way that we will weather this situation is by coming together as a community. We must work together and support each other, even if the choices that we make are not ones that we like. Complaining, running others down, trying to get your way at the expense of others is not the way to help our children. And the purpose of schools is children, not staff, although we are concerned about our staff. We must set an example for our children that only by having a spirit of cooperation and making the best of a bad situation can we help everyone to succeed. We must not look just to her own needs and desires, but to our community as a whole. We have a superintendent who has open communication lines and who works harder than anyone that I have ever seen. She is constantly listening to each department and helping them to know what they can do. She helps each department listen to the other departments. If you do not feel that you're being heard, it is because you have not talked to her. She is constantly in meetings with the Kern County Superintendent of Schools, the health department, the state, the superintendents, other board members, to learn what we can and cannot do. And it changes every day. She lets everyone in on what she learns at these meetings. She makes the difficult decisions and keeps the board apprised of the options every single week. She is the captain of our ship, and we must help her do the best she can by giving her our support. That is why the board has given her a vote of confidence and extended her contract. We need consistency and decisive leadership, and she provides that. We have seen many positive changes in her first year, and this is not the time for a mutiny. That will only make a difficult situation worse. And last, I want to remind all of you out there that you have the opportunity to voice your opinion in November. You can support people you feel who are representing you by voting for them, or you can vote for someone else who you think may better represent you. So register to vote, run for office if you want, and vote in November. Thank you.
Dr. Robinson. Mr. Jensen.
All right, I want to applaud RTA bargaining unit for the scholarships handed out. That's huge for some of the students making their way towards college. So congratulations and good job on that. You always do well year after year on providing that. Justin, thank you for your continued support, my man. You're out here weathering the storm with us every meeting, and we greatly appreciate it. The grounds crews, I want to give a shout out to them. They're probably the most undermanned area in the district, if not the most. They're real close, and we've got a lot of area that they cover. So I'm going to give props to them. That wind, I mean, they can clean something up and that wind tears it up and they're right back out there. We all know from our own yards, but imagine they've got several thousand yards. Okay. Also want to thank the community for their inputs tonight. We got a lot of good inputs, a lot of good questions we will get the answers to. I think we all got a lot of good emails as well from the community. A lot of smart people out there, way smarter than me, offering up suggestions, offering up solutions. And that's what we need, suggestions and solutions. Anybody can gripe, anybody can complain, but I really appreciate the solutions that was given forth, going out, going above and beyond, and having the surveys on both the CSEA side and the RTA side only helps us make our decision for what's best for all. With said that, some of those folks that sent the emails, they're so smart that, as Ms. Robinson said, they need to run for election. Okay. I think it opened up yesterday. You can go to Kern County and you can register. I encourage most of you to do that. Okay. You had great ideas. You're big community pillars. Your names were recognized. Run. Okay. Make a difference for the community, make a difference for the district, and help everyone out. And that's all I have for now.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you for tuning in and for being available, and just for I want to thank the RTA for their work and getting all the information to us, because we need that. For CSCA, I was sorry to hear that Gary wasn't able to come here, but we do know some of his concerns and his main concerns that the CSCA are dealing with. I do want to thank them for their hard work that they have been doing this summer. They've been doing a great job, and administrators. I know it's an important evening tonight, and I just know that we will be able to come together with all the information that we get, and hopefully that we'll be able to discuss it and come to a conclusion, what's best for our staff, for our students and staff and our community. Thank you. Next on the agenda, we have consent items A through E. Do we have any questions?
On E, that's all computer stuff that's getting recycled, right? Or eliminated. Yeah. Okay. I'll make a motion that we accept A through E.
Second by?
That's a purchase orders, right?
I second
Yeah, I got a couple questions.
Oh, okay.
Sparkless water, we pay $9,000 a month.
It goes up and down, throughout the course of the year, obviously. Right now,
Right now it's at low at 9,000.
yeah,
We're looking at filtration systems.
I'm sorry, where are you looking? Let me
I'm on the purchase order,
walk that back.
open POs.
So that's an open deal, that's $9,000 for the year, sorry,
Oh, it's not monthly.
right?
Okay.
That's the beginning of, that's an open deal for the year.
Okay, so these are all open POs for the year. I like that. The security system, the monitoring is 20,000 a year.
Correct.
I feel so much better.
it.
I was gonna start bringing you bottles of water.
That's some high quality H2O right there.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions? Okay, motion by Kuchera, second by Dr. Robbins. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now we're in the general reopening of the fall school year on August 12th. Mrs. Gaines?
Aren't I?
It's a yearly, but it's
That one that typically sits
like monthly laundering. So that's
It's, let me see which one you're talking about.
got monthly.
Right, that's, the open POs, you can be paid at the end of the year.
In a year.
I'm gonna start with my mask on. Sure. But when I feel like I'm gonna faint, I may drop it for a few seconds, so don't be too concerned. Well, good evening, board and guests. It is always a pleasure to present to you, even under these fluctuating conditions. Tonight, I bring to you input that I received from many of the key stakeholders in our district, such as RTA, CSEA, even the lead custodians. You're gonna see a list of everybody that I met with shortly. And also the guidelines. I want you to see, when I talk about guidelines, this is a folder of guidelines that I've received. And I say to you this evening that these guidelines and the input that you're gonna see in this PowerPoint is to hopefully help you come to a decision. I ask this evening that you do not make an emotional decision. This is a big decision that you have to make, and I don't envy you. to have to make it. There is probably no right or no wrong. No matter what decision you make this evening, there will be people that will love it. There will be people that will not understand the why behind it or will not appreciate it. Hopefully you will see in this PowerPoint some of the precautions that the cabinet and I have already been putting in place with support of Raleigh, our director of grounds and maintenance, working very closely with Jonathan. I know they've spent at least $50,000 that I'm aware of, and probably a lot more in to sort of front load whatever decision is made tonight. We have things in place to, you're gonna see some of the machines that have been purchased, and that some of them are already in the campuses being used as we speak. There is no doubt, I'm an educator. I'm first and foremost an educator. I've come to this position from curriculum and instruction. That's what I've done for the past 24 years. But I want you to know that there was a tremendous loss of learning during the March 19th until June 4th. And that was not just in Southern Kern, but that was across the state and probably across the nation. The student group that probably had the greatest impact, because we all know that they do not do well in vulnerable inconsistencies, was our special ed students. So I ask this evening that when making your decision, we think of all of our students, because we're failing as a district if we do not address all the needs of all of our kids. You can't just say, we address 75% of them, that's pretty good in most standards, but no, it's really not. So I ask that you keep that in mind. Tonight, as I said, you're tasked with a big decision. I want you to know that my cabinet and I will do our due diligence. We moved our cabinet meeting from Tuesday to Thursday so that tomorrow morning, well, actually, we can't do it tomorrow morning because now Kern County's changed their meeting, but tomorrow afternoon, we're gonna hit the ground running and putting in policies and procedures to support whatever decision that you make this evening. As stated in our board policy 0470, the Southern Kern Unified School District COVID-19 mitigation plan, the superintendent will provide processes and protocols the district will follow to minimize the health risks associated with COVID-19 in the areas of social distancing, PPE, and sanitization of all facilities. We will also meet with the presidents of RTA and CSEA to create an MOU as needed to prepare for the onset of school. I want to thank some people that, as Mr. Quellman mentioned earlier, I've been meeting with people for over a month. Mr. Quellman, Mr. Jones, and Mary, and I'll mess up Mary's name, Klaskowski, and I initially sat down together and talked and looked at various plans. And as Mr. Quellman mentioned, Gary went back and started the Google Doc, and it just went from being a couple pages to this blown up document that I received input from many, many people. So I want to thank first and foremost my cabinet, because they've been working very hard in not only monitoring their own specific departments, but getting feedback and keeping me abreast of everything that they have become aware of. I want to thank the CSEA members, especially their president, Gary Jones, and his e-board, Mark, Mary, Jessica, Abadilia, and Patty. They have been through emails to me consistently asking questions, asking the right questions, and helping me find the right answers. I want to thank this guy to my left, Mr. Quellman, and his members, the teachers. As you can see, we have a lot of questions that we will need to ask, and they are good questions. So I want to thank Mr. Quellman for taking the liberty of doing the data collection for us this evening and presenting it so well. All the site administrators who have been working with me, a lot of them email me consistently and provide feedback. Our custodial leads, I met individually with all 4 of them, about an hour each, and you would be amazed at how concerned they are, especially for the education, but also making sure that they have adequate time to clean all of the facilities. So I want to thank Cindy, Keith, Henry, and Peppy, I get to call him Peppy now, for all the time that they met with me and their great input. And of course, Ashley over in transportation. If you'll notice, we initially had in your Friday letter, we had a model that was A in the morning, B in the afternoon, A, B, A, B, A, B. After meeting with the custodial leads and Ashley, it was those 2 groups who said, we need to eliminate the AB because we just didn't have the bus drivers. I learned something new. Bus drivers can only drive so many hours a day, and we just don't have the buses to come and go that quickly. So I really appreciated them. And then, of course, my 2 that I meet with every week, grounds and maintenance, Raleigh and Quinn. They're always game to do anything they can for the cause, but it was also good to hear from them. So I want to say thank you, a huge thank you to everybody who contributed also on the Google Doc, because sometimes you don't know, nobody had to really put their name, so we didn't really know who made the comments, but we know there were a lot of them. So tonight we're talking about considerations provided by state and local officials. I want you to know that we've heard from the health department, the state superintendent of public instruction, the governor, Kern County superintendent of schools, and of course, Dr. Mary Barlow. And today, I sat in on the CBO/superintendent meeting, and it's very important. And let me front load before I read this to you, that I am not here this evening to sway you in any direction. As your superintendent, I am obligated to front load you with all of the most recent and pertinent information so you can make a decision that's also based on not just hearsay or guidelines. You will notice in these guidelines that no one mandates us to do anything. They are just that, guidelines. But today, I'm sure Mr. Barth was hearing the same thing that I was. I find it very important that I share this little bit of information with you. I'm certainly not going to read this whole document, but there are a couple things in here I want you to be aware of. And this could change tomorrow morning, but for now, this is the law. This is Senate Bill number 98. It was approved by the governor on June 29th of 2020. In section 34 of this Senate bill, under 43501, the governor lists all of the mandated instructional minutes that we now have to abide by. When we had the COVID shutdown on March 19th, no one really knew if we were doing instructional minutes. No one said you had to comply with any instructional minutes. It was so, it hit us so urgently and so quickly that they just wanted us to get into distance learning as fast as we could. There were no mandates at that time for what we should do. I gave you a copy of these couple pages, so you can see the instructional minutes have been shortened some, but they are still the same instructional minutes that we need to account for and we need to take roll for. In section 43502, it states, for purposes of calculating apportionments for the 2020-21 fiscal year, a local educational agency shall offer in-person instruction and may offer distance learning pursuant to the requirements of this part. And it says at the bottom, it says that you can account for those instructional minutes, both in the in-person instruction and also in the distance learning. And a couple more things that I want to share with you this evening. 43504 under the same Senate bill says, a local educational agency shall offer in-person instruction to the greatest extent possible. Now, on number 3, it says, a local educational agency that provides distance learning shall not be penalized up till September 1st. In other words, if we went into 5 days of distance learning from now or from August 12th to September 1st, we would not be penalized. However, come September 1st, and I read you already how this could be, our apportionments could be affected. Should we not get another new law between now and September 1st, then we are out of compliance, we are not following the law, and yes, our apportionments could be affected. So I just wanted to share that information with you because did we not get this today? We did just get this today. So. So when we open our school year, August 12th, there are some guidelines and some components that are very important to us. First of all is the health and safety measures. We cannot even plan or think of any opening without considering first the health and safety. Also, student engagement and achievement, mental and emotional wellness of our students and staff, because as Mr. Quellman mentioned, some people are very, very reluctant to return under the COVID-19. And access and equity for all. As I said earlier, we have to come up with a plan that's going to work for all of our students, not just a select few. And we also need to take in operations. How does the child nutrition department fit into this? How does transportation weigh into this? Those 2 components right there are critical because no matter what plan, we will be feeding children. We will probably, even if we went to 5 days of distance learning, we will still be providing supervision for those essential employees. We know that we have parents who must go to work. So we will still have children in school. And we need to, we also want to look at all the various plans, look at some of the pros and cons, and hopefully by doing that, you will have, including the parent survey, and you will have a better idea of which one fits our community. It's bad when you can't see that with your glasses, but you can't read without them. So, guiding principles, as I mentioned earlier, these are the 4 areas that we need to truly focus on and will focus on in Southern Kern. Health and safety of our students and staff members. Student achievement and engagement. We know that there was tremendous learning loss. How much I don't know if we'll ever really be able to measure how much learning loss the kids in Southern Kern suffered through this, the past quarter. And also mental and emotional wellness. As much as possible, we need to return our kids to a whole system approach of education where everything is covered for them. When they're at home, they miss out on the social emotional component of being at school. They need to be in friends. with friends. They need to be in front of teachers. And so these are some of the things that we need to make sure that we do. We also need to have resources available to support our students and our families and staff. And again, access and equity for all students. And that includes our foster kids, our homeless kids, the kids who don't have the advantage of having Wi-Fi at home. We can't just say, here's a hotspot, and if the hotspot doesn't work, we cannot just let them fail. So whatever plan that we put in place starting tomorrow, we'll also probably have to have like the what's that animal, that sea animal with all the octopus. We're gonna have to have some other avenues to meet the needs of our medically fragile children. So if that means having an independent study program on an elementary campus, it could be under the umbrella of Abe Lincoln, but perhaps our medically fragile children could report to school 1 day a week or 1 hour a week in an independent study program. That way we're meeting the needs of all the kids. So, and we want to communicate to all of our stakeholders in English and Spanish, making sure that they know.
Okay, I had a question, since we got into that Abe Lincoln model. One of my questions was, for those families who do not want to send their kids to school, that are still, afraid that they might contract something from that, can they be under that umbrella? And if they don't have a computer or internet area in their area, do we have a paper model, like the books that we used to use at Abe Lincoln, that they can use so they can continue learning in paper instead of computerized?
I think there's, depending on the course, but I believe there's some paper curriculum that could accompany that. I would say to answer the first part of your question, Mr. Gutierrez, I would believe that yes, we could accommodate. I know there may be some parents out there who let's say a child is in a home and maybe the grandparents are also in that home, and the grandparent may be high risk. And there's a fear that maybe not so much the child may contact COVID, but perhaps the child may transport that if that's, there's so many uncertainties at this point in time. Maybe the child could take it home to the grandparent. That child could. I don't see why not be, enrolled in an independent study program.
Because we had a few letters of people who do not want to bring their kids back to school right away. So I think whatever model we pick, we need to make accommodations to be able to serve those people along with it.
And I think that our associate, Ms. Hargis, is very much aware of this, and she's already got this in her mind, how we could accommodate those kids. Now, obviously, if the numbers become staggering, that would present a problem for us. But because an independent study teacher usually has around 28 students a week only that they see. But I'm sure we'd have to see first what that number would look like. Our first goal would be to accommodate, absolutely.
Well, what kind of comes to mind is if we have a large number, say we have 200 kids that decide that they don't want to come to school, that they want to do distance learning only. Could we set up maybe a couple of teachers to do strictly the distance learning to accommodate those students? And then again, if they are not available to get internet access, can we get the same curriculum on paper? Maybe do like packets like we did for the younger kids. So they could still be on track with the same curriculum and still be able to stay up with the rest of the students. So when we do go back on a full schedule, they won't be left behind. So those are kind of some of the things that I'm looking at, because we're gonna have that group of people that do not want to bring their kids back to school.
And I appreciate you asking that question, Mr. Gutierrez, because again, as I stated earlier, as a district, as a local educational agency, and as a board of trustees, superintendent, we're all obligated, we should understand the need to meet the needs of all of our kids. So as we move forward after this evening, then we're gonna see what we may have to put in place in addition to just the plan.
Correct. And that's kind of what I'm getting at is we're gonna have what we pick and what we decide on. But there's gonna be a group of kids who need different type of instruction. So we'll need to accommodate them. So we'll have to kind of fine tune for that. And then I have some other questions, but we can get into those later.
But I
As
like
you
that
go through.
idea about the independent study being at the school sites instead of having just coming out of Abraham Lincoln. I think that was a good suggestion.
And I think, Mrs. Hargis, you can maybe in a little bit. I think we talked about putting that under the umbrella of Abraham,
Right.
because it is an independent
But as the
school. But
elementary
then
side
putting that, and maybe even we might need one at Tropico
Or
as
high
well.
school, right.
So we'll have to see, once we know what we're doing, and then the communication will go out to the parents. Here are the options, and it may be such that we have to do this for a quarter, first quarter maybe, in hopes that this will go away. We can hope
Okay, well,
optimistically.
I have a couple of comments on that. First of all, didn't we have a restriction on what percentage of students could be in independent study to stay in compliance?
I think
Isn't there?
Isn't the COVID-
There is a percentage, so we'll have to check to see if we can,
Expand that?
in light of this situation, if they will allow us to expand.
Well, so my suggestion is to enroll those kids in regular classrooms, but then have the teacher do all of her lessons so that people could access them from distance learning. But they would be part of that classroom. Do you hear what I'm saying?
Or you can have the teachers that are not able, maybe have underlying issues. They
Oh,
could
yeah.
They could be the ones that could do the distant learning for those students, or mentoring, or,
well,
All of these, RTA has already put those options in place in the MOU we presented. RTA is prepared to do all of those things
Oh,
in working with the district.
Okay.
So they're
that
willing
was
to-
my question. Are we prepared to go that route if that's what we need to do?
According to that survey, it could be up to 30% of our population who wants to continue distance learning.
well, it's not 30%. I don't believe, Dr. Robinson, there were other options there too. But we don't want to necessarily confuse distance learning with independent
Right.
study. There is a difference there with
Right.
regards to the teacher making lessons and then sending it out to the kids. We may have, let's say, I'm just gonna make this up, in a first, we may have 8 first graders who want independent study, and we may have 6 or 7 second graders. So they might be combined with the same teacher providing those early primary grade students the independent study by meeting with them 1 hour a week, something like that. It is uniquely different than distance learning.
well, you could do both, couldn't you? I mean, you can do the independent study and then have a teacher do the distant learning as well, for some of those students that don't want to come to school,
Yeah, some of our students who might
that
be,
might not want to come, I mean,
Yeah.
whatever.
medically fragile, or some of the students whose parents feel that
Right.
there's a fear for them to
But
come
those
out.
numbers will not be included with the percentage that Abraham Lincoln could only have, right? It doesn't, does it?
They would, because they would not be attending a traditional day.
Well, okay, but either way, if we went distant learning all week, it'd be the same thing. You know what I mean? To me, it'd be the same thing, whether you went all week, how would it not be a traditional?
Well, so really what we're looking at here is, so for independent study, we would have, those students so that they could come in and physically meet with a teacher. So distance learning, we would take more of our home hospital model, for our students that are medically fragile.
Right.
Because there was, we don't want to send our staff into homes.
Right.
And then, on the reverse side, those families don't want our staff coming in to possibly spread something to their student. So, so distance learning would work more with those medically fragile versus really wanting to, we might have some that go into that distance learning more, but if we have students that don't come to school, we would much rather put them into the independent study model where they're meeting face to face with somebody and, somebody's checking up on them and, let's see how things are going. And, not only checking on their academics, but checking on their social emotional welfare, that kind of thing, so.
But I think you're still gonna
Those are
have,
just all ideas that we,
Right.
In cabinet kind of thrown around and said, okay, well, once this decision's made, then we'll, figure out exactly, maybe send out a survey, like, okay, who's is not coming back, who is, on board for doing whatever it is that we're gonna do.
oh, okay.
So yeah, so there's just so many moving parts to this whole thing, so.
I have one more comment. Maybe because there's so many things that have to be put in place, is it possible for us to start our school year later so that we would have time to get these things in place and change the calendar?
Well, you're talking way too late in the year for trying to reschedule the calendar.
I can just piggyback on that comment, Dr. Robinson, that I sort of disagree with Mr. Quellman on the one note. I was asked by a board member at Palmdale School District. I do not believe they've come to a decision yet. They are thinking possibly of opening up the day after Labor Day to give a little extension on this, what's going on right now with COVID. And I think they're also possibly looking at, I'm sure they're looking at various models such as but I know that one of the ones they're considering is possibly returning to 5 days of instruction.
Well, I think,
I was informed that about a week ago.
well, I think that LA Unified is totally different from Kern County. And that's why we still, here we still have open restaurants and what have you as of today. I mean, it can change Friday or whatever. So we really just can't compare waiting until like September because other districts are waiting, till it all, boils over or whatever. I think we need to make, our decision on our community, where we are, how we are low on the COVID. Our death rate is low. Our positive testing is, is not as high as LA County or San Diego County. You got Orange County in the middle there, and they're going 5 days a week. So I mean, every district, we all each have our own to make a decision. I think we need to take that in consideration, just to know that, what is best for our community. And I believe that we should aim to open for August 12th. That's my opinion.
Jonathan, is there any wiggle room for any FTE to be added and us continue on the path to solvency? For such things as the maybe learning loss or whatever monies might be coming through for the distance learning piece that you would want to set up on campuses.
So we do have learning loss money, which, I'm sorry.
I'm gonna get to that, but that's okay.
Or even a half FTEs where we could put half days on some
There's a
campuses.
balancing act with the money, right? Because Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you're looking at it at any given moment, here comes the learning loss money. We're told we can do things like summer school, tutoring, and make sure you spend it by the end of December. But it wasn't a new source of money. It backfilled a cut that would have been made. And so, is there new money? No. But we can be a little creative with how we spend it. So we have to be cautious before we make promises. And we need to be looking at our current staffing. We're at a point where we can't eliminate a lot of staff right now. That's locked in, and we have half of our kindergarten that we would normally expect to see registered at this point. And so we can look creatively at how we allocate staff, existing staff, and we have had those conversations.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, so we'll continue on. I just want to say that our goal is to use, especially for the mental and emotional wellness, our mental health therapists, our counselors, and of course, our psychologists to support our students and staff as needed when we reopen for school. And I want to remind that when we talk about access and equity, if you see at the bottom that we're talking about our homeless, our foster, our English learners, and students are our diverse population, and also our special ed population. This needs to be of grave concern, is meeting the needs of all students. When we talk about liability considerations when we reopen, as this folder contains guidelines for reopening, and the best way to avoid liability is to try to follow the guidelines to the best we can, or at least to be able to show we have done A, C, and E. Maybe we didn't do everything, but we have certain things that we have put in place. What I can tell you there is that our memorandum of coverage, our MOC does contain an exclusion for injuries or damages to our employees for COVID. We are not covered. We are not covered. But I want you to know that there's a state assemblyman in Long Beach by the name, and I'll probably, did I put it on there? O'Donnell, I believe is his name. Yes, Assemblyman O'Donnell. He happens to be a Democrat, not that that matters. Where it has a certain bill, it's called AB 1384. As soon as they return to session, hopefully this bill will get voted on, and this bill could exempt LEAs from COVID-19 liability. So it's just a bill for us to watch in the future. Health and safety. This is something that Jonathan and Raleigh have been working on a lot. We've talked at length in cabinet about social distancing and how we're going to do that. Are we going to mark? Are we going to paint up the walkways in the schools? Are we going to put stickers on the cement? What are we going to do to hopefully have children as they enter school spaced apart? We're going to take daily temperatures when they enter the campus for students and staff. Also, who's going to do the daily temperatures? That's also an issue that we need to finalize with when we plan the procedures for whatever plan we have. Hand washing, Jonathan is looking at, or maybe you have already, Jonathan, purchased additional or rented additional hand washing stations that we can put around all of our sites to help children with lots of signs, wash your hands frequently. Maybe the teachers need to prod this a little more in all of our schools. Facial coverings, we've ordered actual cloth ones for all of our staff members, and with the instructions of how to maintain and take care of their cloth ones. We also have paper ones. We have, I believe, the shields, the facial shield that you can actually see through ordered. We have hand sanitizers, disinfecting procedures, and this
this picture down here, I wish I could blow it up as big as the machine is, because that is a giant machine, and we ordered one for each site. They're already in, and they are using them. And basically, if I understand the machine correctly, you can just go in a room and spray this room with this chemical, and then just go around and just soup it all up. And in less than 3 minutes, you can clean a classroom. It's really very powerful. And then, as I said, each school got one of these. Last July or August, Eric purchased what we called wands for every site, one per site. And it was very effective, but there's one of them at each site, and 3 or 4 night custodians. So it was a little difficult to get everything done daily with the wand, but we used them primarily in restrooms. So we've also purchased 2 backpack machines that are also very powerful. I believe they're the PX 300 ESs that disinfect and sanitize, and there's 2 for each site of the backpacks, and the custodians just carry them on their back and do their thing. So these items, along with a few other things that we've purchased that I'll talk about in a minute, was about $50,000 that we've spent, and these things are already coming in and being used at the site, all with a goal of protecting the health and safety of our teachers and students. We also found out today that we have almost a pallet to be picked up tomorrow in Kern County. They ordered 60 pallets for their 47 districts, and we're getting almost a pallet of different thermometers and different PPE that we can distribute to all of our schools. When we talk about health and safety, and we talk about the physical distancing, the guidelines would like us to have 6 feet in between student X and student Y. In a perfect world, that is the request. There are documents in here that state if all the students have on a mask in the class, then you could do 3 feet in between student X, student Y, and student Z, if they all have on masks. So we know that whenever the plan is selected, we will have to assess how the desks will be arranged, and what we can do with the support of, first and foremost, our teachers, and making sure that those desks are maintained like that. We're going to do our best social distance by marking of walkways, entrances, and exits of schools, multi-purpose rooms, libraries, gyms, entrance and exits of school campuses, and making sure the temperature lines. One of the things that is talked about in the guidelines is that every student and staff member has to have that temperature taken every day when they arrive at school. So again, the logistics of that is who will be our person to take those temperatures. We know we have the thermometers now and more coming, but these are some of the things that we need to put in place yet that cabinet will do more of. Protective equipment, I sort of have touched on this. We found out today plexiglass dividers that we want to purchase for the offices at all sites, including rare earth, may have to be glass. And Mr. Bender, you can address Mr. Bender's question a little later, about the quality, what type of glass, because I wasn't sure.
Yeah, tempered glass,
Tempered glass?
tempered safety glass.
Okay.
It will, if it breaks, it goes like your
Okay.
windshield in your car doesn't have sharp edges.
And then, of course, physical distancing has to be maintained on the school buses. So the guideline in here is 1 student per row
every other row. So I'm not sure how many buses and trips that would take. I was trying to do the math. I have to know first how many seats in a bus that typically will accommodate 78 students. So that's another issue that we will have to,
That might be another question you want to put in that survey to the parents, like, will you be willing to drive your child to school?
it was in my,
was it already in yours?
survey.
Oh, okay.
Yes. And there are many who will drive their kids to school, but then, we still need to make sure we can, even at this
Right.
distance spacing, accommodate our need. Okay. So student engagement and achievement, we talked a little bit about this. Our start date, according to our calendar that we've created, is August 12th. That's a Wednesday. Right now, our school sites are waiting. They've created master schedules, but of course, if we should go to a cohort model such as ABAD or something to that nature, then they're going to have to really get busy on assigning kids to a specific cohort, should that be a choice. I don't know that we will be able to know how much learning loss our children suffered. One of the things I do want to talk to Mr. Quillman about and also Ed Services Department is how do we begin the year with our students knowing that many of them, especially in his area of math, I read a research document about a week ago. They predict that the greatest learning loss is going to be in math, in the area of math. And so how do we recover our children? Do we start out the year trying to backtrack some essential standards that they may have missed? Or do we just move forward, hoping that with some Saturdays, some tutoring, some teacher, just maybe some one-on-one instruction, a little guidance, that the student will be able to catch up. We're going to see more of a problem with this probably at the elementary level, as those skills build on each other. You need the third grade skills to be successful, sometimes in fourth, and so on and so forth. So we also know that as we move forward, we have the accessibility of devices in grades 3 through 12. Our K2 students do not have any device at this time. That presents a problem when we talk about going to, let's say, a distance learning model. They don't. So teachers are required to do packets and to build on their instruction based on the curriculum that they have at the elementary. And of course, classroom set up depending on plan, every other desk 3 to 6 feet apart. That's part of the student engagement, will impact student engagement. The schedule for our students with disabilities, they need to be probably at school more than at home. They're not necessarily that successful in the distance learning model. ACES program will continue for the 2021 school year, so we will have after-school program. And the learning loss money, which is about $1 million almost. It's $985,872 to be exact. So what we're going to be able to do is, this is funding from the CARES Act. What we're going to be able to do is to be able to offer some before or after tutoring for our kids at all levels. Offer some Saturday schools if I can get some teachers on board who want to maybe, let's say we have a student who maybe want to get an hour and a half of language arts reading and maybe another hour of math. And maybe we can throw something in there that would be fun for the students, like robotics for an hour or art for an hour, that would just make them want to give up a Saturday morning and come to school with maybe a nutrition break in there. So these are some of the things that we're looking at, that we can help backfill the loss of the kids in Southern Kern. And I think it's important, even though as John said, we're not getting additional, I mean, this money came, but it sort of counters what we lost. It is important that we try to put this money for the needs of the kids. That's the reason we're getting it. So that's one area that I want to stay very, very true to. So we have our mental and emotional wellness of, we talked about offering the independent study program already. This is something we talked about in cabinet. We know that the social, emotional, and well-being of our students is best met at school. I wanted to read to you, and I hope I didn't pass it up, something that I found very, very interesting. A comment that was made by the Pediatric Academy basically says they are very much in favor of children being at school. And they believe that that's the only place where all of the needs of the children, from the social, emotional, to the academic, to the physical well-being of the kids. They worry about, are the kids eating? Are the kids exposed to being, abused at home? So they are very much fighting. I was surprised that they came out with such a strong advocacy for bringing the kids back to school. And I just wanted to share that with you. So we need to provide academic and accommodations for all of our support students. And we're going to provide them with multiple avenues to catch up on their academic learning. Access and equity communication procedures to all parents. We will begin as soon as the decision is made and we feel comfortable in making sure that we have all the programs in place that we can do for our children and that meet the needs of what our parents are saying. My child can't come, but could you do this? So we're going to have that discussion. We need to communicate with our parents in English and Spanish, district and site websites, emails, Blackboard messages, phone calls from me, from different departments. And again, you've heard me say it over and over, we need to focus on child nutrition, what they can do, transportation, the academic, the social, emotional well-being, and make sure that our plans meet the needs of all children. Operations, depending on the model chosen, elementary students may eat in the cafeteria or they may eat in the classroom. Depending on, we would like to keep it normal and have them eating in the cafeteria. In talking to Rosie and Raven, they've said that we probably will start our year more with a grab and go type breakfast and lunch that they could maybe take outside and eat. We may need to buy additional, the large big trash cans where the kids, they can just be rolled to different areas on campus where the kids could distance space, but eat their lunch comfortably outside. Even on distance days, we are responsible to provide our kids with breakfast and lunch. So we will continue probably what we did the entire summer and still are doing. Seems like summer's over. Not really, that seems like it. Seems like we didn't have one actually. So where the students were able to go to various sites and get their grab and go breakfast, lunch, and dinner this summer. But of course, when school starts, we'll do the breakfast and the lunch more than likely. Transportation schedules, this is a very sticky one because in talking to the transportation department, the distance spacing that is recommended that we follow will require more trips for the students to be taken to school. Depending on, it'll take us a while to see what parents will come forward and say, I do need a bus pass for my children. I want to just say to you, and again, it is my job to bring out the good and the bad. It will be very hard. It's impossible, let me say that. It's impossible to distance space kids on our buses if we return to 5 days of school. If the same number of kids require a transportation service that we had this year, we would have to probably come up with some additional buses, and I know for sure additional bus drivers.
Double the buses, double the drivers, double the room.
Yes. So keep that in mind as well. But the good thing is our buses are so clean. They've been working on cleaning those buses since March, and latter part of March. This is the one that we started buying last summer, and we bought 2 more of these for transportation department, and they can just go in and spray them, and they can do it in between runs, which makes it very easy for the bus transportation. We purchased 2 for transportation. We also got 1 for the district office, so all of the offices here can be cleaned on a regular basis.
Can we get, costs on, if we go back to 5 days a week? What's that gonna cost us in transportation costs?
Buying a new bus would be about $250,000 each.
Yeah, can you work something up
Sure.
for the future just to get a total
Can you
amount?
rent them?
What's this?
We could potentially rent or lease,
Or get a service.
smooth it out, or get a service, which, yeah,
You could go with the service for that many residents.
and then we would have collective bargaining issues as well.
Barbara, I don't know if it's true, I never checked in on it, but I was told at the restaurants, if it's enclosed booth, you can seat them. Is there any way we can put up a shield between the seats? No plastic shield can go from one seat, the back of the seats to protect the student.
There's a shortage
Safety
in
issue.
plexiglass for one thing.
Truck curtains work well.
The germ protection
Yeah.
is trumped by the potential injury factor of a bus in motion that
Okay.
suddenly stops or has an accident.
Okay.
They won't let us do that.
We did talk a little bit about possibly staggering or changing the exits and the arrivals at school sites so that kids coming in, or maybe certain grade levels exit in one area and other grade levels exit in another. These are some of the considerations, and
have
also
a question.
limiting the
I have a
volunteers.
question. I think that, we're talking about the students not, the social distancing and the 6 feet and all of the masks and all that. There hasn't been one case where a student has transferred to another student, that virus. It's between the adults. So why are we talking so much about money on the bus when it's the kids that are not the ones that are, that get ill from it, or there hasn't even been a case of it? And I think there was one case and they withdrew that one because they said that one student had an underlying,
Yeah, they
an underlying
had an
issue or something.
immune
So,
disorder.
yeah, so really, we're talking about these guidelines, which is good and all, but I think that our main concern here too is the teachers, the custodians, the adults, everybody that's over 18. I think that's our main concern there.
I think there's a lot of unknowns too.
Well, yeah, but I
We've been
mean,
told 6 feet to 18 feet.
Well, I know, but I mean with the cases though, with the
Right.
cases, there hasn't been one, and we've had COVID since what,
Right.
December, February?
I think.
So I just
the
think-
unknown is whether or not
Right,
children are carriers.
well,
I
right,
mean,
right.
We still don't have all those answers.
Well, but there hasn't been a case.
And we
Right.
do have to take into consideration whether or not, it's a real, whether or not it's a problem, people's fears have to be,
Persuade.
yeah.
Yeah.
We have to allow people to do what they feel comfortable doing,
Right,
you know?
right. I mean, I just feel like if we go forward with it and then allow the parents to say, no, my child's not gonna go to school 5 days a week. Okay,
I'm
but we're
talking about
also,
staff too, though.
oh, okay, with staff. And staff, I don't know what we do with staff, how, I mean, I'm sure that's negotiations too, as you're talking about it.
And
I think the
President
fear,
Sanchez, I just want to let you know, I feel like it's my obligation
Right.
to tell you as much
yeah,
as,
I understand that,
I
but,
don't want you to be uninformed.
no, I know, and I understand and I appreciate that, but I think that while you're going through this, we have questions. So once you've gone through it, then we're like, oh, I wanted to ask this question or something, and then we forget about it, and we really want
Please,
to put it out
please
there.
ask questions,
I
and when I'm
appreciate that.
finished, well, not too much longer, then I'm gonna open it up for discussion, if you
Of
don't
course,
mind, to
of
the
course.
board. So parent survey results, as you can see here, these were, I highlighted some of the top, parent survey questions, not all of them, but these were some of them. And I think that one of the key things that I want you to notice here, and let me just say that the most recent results from the parent survey were pulled last Thursday, which was July 9, so that I could get it in this PowerPoint for you on Friday. So I think the most critical one is 67.08% of parents who participated, and in this number, we had 650 parents who participated in the survey. So 67.08% of the 650 would like to see a school back in a traditional model. So I just want you to be aware of that. I appreciated the parents who took this survey and of course, this back in a traditional model with the safety
Right.
precautions in
Yeah, with the
place.
temperatures
Yes,
and the.
yes.
cleaning
So I want to make that
Right.
very clear.
Or how did we get that 650 out there? Did we, on an email?
Email and, he did it through, it was a Survey Monkey. I think he probably sent it out through Constant Contact to the
Were
parents.
we successful of getting out 3,300 student emails? Or, I mean, as many students we have in our school, were we pretty successful in getting emails out to a lot of them?
Yes, yes. And then we've had a few more this past week who, when I did a phone message home about feeding the kids during the month of July, and I talked in that phone call briefly about, the parent survey. And so I started, and I gave my email address. I don't know if you guys heard that. I gave my email address, and the next morning I started receiving a few emails from parents saying, I don't think I got the survey. So I immediately sent them the link, and they responded to the survey. So we got a few more. At one time, we only had like 500 some responses. So when I pulled this, actually Dan pulled it for me. Thank you, Dan. We ended up with about 654, but I pulled 650 because for most of the questions answered, it was about 650 people. Sometimes they would skip a question.
Do you know the percentage of how many said they would drive their child to school?
The actual need for bus transportation was, I think it was like in the 30-some%. It was much lower, again, based on 650 people. Those that could have been 650 people who typically drive their children or their children walk to school. So that could be a little bit skewed. That data could be skewed. We actually have to literally say to the parents, will you need transportation as we open in August? So to get a much more accurate count. RTA recommendations, I'm not going to dwell too long on this, but a few pros and cons. Mr. Croman gave you very clear data on, and again, I just want to front load you with it. When we say RTA, we're saying RTA, those members who participated in his, as he said, he had 100, out of about 170. So that's, I'm not sure if we do the math, that's over 50%, it's probably about 60-some% there, but it's not everybody. So I don't want to mislead you that this represents every teacher in our district. But for those who participated, the preference is A, B, with the distance day being on Friday. CSEA, and again, the same guideline. Not very many, I don't know how many people participated. Some went in and gave feedback on the Google Doc, but the choice of CSEA was AB, distance day, AB, with the distance day being on Wednesday instead of Friday. Cabinet, we also did we discussed the different models and talked about it. And Cabinet, with the exception of Cheryl, who was out for surgery, and Amy, who was not at that meeting, the Cabinet came to a unanimous decision that the preference was AB, distance day on Wednesday, AB. If that,
Are the number of school days, is that taking into account moving the min day or the PLC day?
yes, and I have that.
For each plan?
Yes, and Mr. Tanksley, when I'm finished, I will give you the exact numbers of school days for each one of the plans. It's in my envelope, my big folder here. Give me a second, I'll get that information for you. So I wanted to include a couple of other models that I feel are contenders that you would want to consider. This one is Plan 5. Mr. Coleman talked a little bit about this. We talked about this one in Cabinet also. The good thing about Plan 5, if you want to look at the good thing, is it does not cross-contaminate children. You see both cohorts, AA comes on Monday and Tuesday, and BB comes on Wednesday and Thursday. So that gives the staff, Tuesday night, they're cleaning like crazy, the night custodians, to prepare or to prevent any cross-contamination. But on Monday and Tuesday, Thursday and Friday, or Wednesday and Thursday, the same students are going to be there. Now, as I say this works out so beautifully, all of these plans, when we're talking elementary, but let's talk about the middle school and the high school, because at the elementary, they see anywhere from 24 to 28 students. When you start talking grades 6 through 12, now they have 5 or 6 periods, some of them, of 30 kids in a class. So 150 students. Even if you do an AABB distance, there's AABB first period, a totally different group of kids, second period, third period, fourth period. It kind of, this thought process flies out the window, because you would have to really be in there having the kids wipe desks or do whatever you can. Even though the devices we've just purchased for the $50,000 allegedly disinfect the classroom up to 72 hours, Jonathan? 72 hours. So that's what possibly would save that. But it is different. And then, of course, there's the return to regular school, traditional school model, which is, the reason this was brought back on your Friday letter, this was initially not a contender. We were advised, no, probably not gonna be able to return it. Then all of a sudden, it was back, we can do, traditional, day. And then we were told, 5 days of distance learning was no longer to be a selection. So I'm telling you, it's still very fluid. It does change
Right.
from time to time. But this is why I brought this one back in my Friday letter, and I also brought it back in the Google Docs because it is now something that we can contend with. So additional considerations shortly, sports program, CIF, we're supposed to get the final word July 20th. Currently, we've got football and girls volleyball, doing some type of summer conditioning. There must be 50 footballs out on that field because no two children can share a football. So I'm not sure what that's looking like, but I wish them well. Before and after school tutoring programs is a plan we have, depending again, what we can get our teachers to agree and to do. But obviously, we would be paying additional duty hours for them to offer some tutoring for our students. CARES Act funding, learning loss to mitigate the learning loss we saw from March to June. I just want to say that as we move forward with the CARES Act funding, we will do our very best to put in as many open avenues for kids to recover from this as we can. Saturday school potentially offered, ACES program after school, request to use facilities by outside groups. We have not opened that back up yet. And now, especially since they just closed down the numbers, we probably will have to sit on this for a while. And preparation for a possible partial or full complete shutdown. As we're selecting this plan tonight, we know that should this COVID hit again, the governor could say, we're all going back to 5 days of distance learning and it's out of our control. We will have an issue. We don't have Chromebooks for our students in grades K through 2, so we're back to probably preparing packets. And so even as we plan to put the procedures in place for your plan this evening, we also need to work on what our plan will look like should we have to close again. So we have to do 2 of those. One moment. And so here's a review of the 5 plans and Plan 1, AB, distance day, AB. Plan 4, AB, AB, distance day. Plan 5, AABB, distance day. Plan 8, all students back in traditional school. Plan 12, distance learning 5 days. In closing, I just want to say to you before I open it up for discussion, there's no playbook for this time. There's no one who's telling us this is the best plan, depending on what your priority is. You maybe have a tendency to lean one way or another. So no matter what decision we make, I want you to keep in mind we will not please everybody all the time. Let's keep that in mind. So board, at this time, I will open this up for discussion and
Well, what we can do is probably talk about what plan we think is best, as an individual. I can start. I like to say that I like the Plan 8, that all students would be in school 5 days a week. I think that what it's doing to our community, to our students, to our families, all the way around, everybody's getting hurt by it. Our special ed students are not, getting the services that they need. It's gonna get us in litigations. Our EL students who need it the most as well will not be getting the services that they need if we go with distance learning. The emotional and social is what the children need. And the education, the education's first, and I think that that's the most important thing that our kids need. I feel like if we go back to this plan, and it can change within Friday or the next week. I think that we just need to put our foot out there, not be fearful, and think about the children and our community and the adults and our staff as well. I feel that we can make accommodations for our staff if they have underlying issues. They can be in a different area, I don't know how you would do that, but I don't know if they can teach out of their credential or whatever, but and I know that not everybody's young, not everybody's in their 40s and they're teaching, except maybe Armstrong. How old are you? It's okay. But anyhow, so I'm just saying all the way around, I think that we're doing the protective things that we need to do. We're going to be doing the temperatures. We're doing the cleaning of the buses, the classrooms. We're already working on that now. We're getting it ready. I think we're ready to get that going. I think we can work out the other situations once we make that decision, that the district will jump on it and work whatever they have to work out. And I just think it's the best thing all the way around for the students, for the staff, for the families, for our community, and just get back on where we were. And like I said, with the students not being the ones that we need to be fearful for, it's really each other. As adults are the ones, we can be the ones who wear the mask to have the social distancing. And the children, they don't need to be separated from each other.
I just noticed.
That hasn't been proven, and there's a reason for that. They're just, I don't know what the reason is, but it's not there. The data's not there, so. You want to add to that?
You heard my statement. I think that we need to get children back in school, and Mrs. Gaines, I want to applaud you for all the ways that you have provided for the safety of everyone, disinfecting and but people have to have their own personal responsibility. You can't be responsible for whether somebody washes their hands. They have to wash their hands. They have to wear their masks. People have to be responsible for themselves and considerate of others at the same time. But I favor 5 days traditional school with separating the children in the classroom. This is one plan, and this plan would separate kids into groups where they would have in contact with less people, but it requires that the teacher teach in a different way. They can't just go back to the front of the room and, they will have to send everything to laptops or, we're going to have to be flexible.
I can be flexible with my teaching. It will not be 6 feet apart. They
Right.
won't be 3 feet
Yeah,
apart.
you can't even do
And
that.
they
with
are
the kindergarten.
carriers. Yes, they are.
I haven't heard that as a, go ahead,
I'm
quicker.
sorry. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Go ahead.
I like the AB, because we need to keep kids at least as far away from each other as we possibly can. We gotta think about the social distancing, both for the kids and for the staff. My question though is, where the distancing day where it would be better served, whether in the middle or at the end. The way you described it, Mr. Quellman, was you get to see where your students are at after seeing them at least for 2 days. Now, if it was on Wednesday, you would see them Monday and Tuesday, and then again Thursday and Friday. It would take about a week to figure out where they were at. Actually, a week and a half. Where if they were on Friday, you might be able to catch up right away in a week. I'm just kind of.
So, yeah, and please, again, I know I'm out of order to speak, so
No, please
the
do.
board is welcome to tell me that I'm out of order. Think of the students in the B cohort. With the Friday distance learning, we see them on Tuesday and Thursday. I get feedback on Thursday as to what, how they did with their Tuesday instruction and their work on Wednesday. I see them on Thursday. I get a good, strong feeling for where they're at, and I can make those plans on Friday for the following week. If the distance learning is on Wednesday, and I'm talking about the B cohort,
Right.
I see them Tuesday. I don't see them again till Friday. Then the weekend comes. I don't see them till Tuesday again. And then on Wednesday, I'm trying to prepare for really just that Friday. It's a much more, it has much more continuity if I've seen all my students in 4 consecutive days without the weekend in between. And then on Friday, I can start planning for the next week.
Or think of, I know when I used to teach, I would get units. So I would teach a unit 1 week, I would be able to teach that whole unit, and then on Friday, I would be able to assess whether I need to go back and reteach or go on to the next unit.
Right.
So
And
at
that's-
the end of the week, I have more flexibility versus the middle. I don't know if those kids are going to get it till afterwards, and I've already planned for the next week. So now everything's shot, it's-
Yeah, and the way he's describing it, at first, when I first looked over the plans, I thought that Wednesday was a perfect day for it because it kind of splits up the week. But when you mention it the way you mention it, it really makes sense that you can plan your week now. Fridays are basically your planning for the following week with, at the same time, being able to help the kids who are struggling with the first part of the week.
Yeah, you can reteach and.
Right. So I kind of think Friday would be a better fit. Now going with, say, Plan 4. For special ed kids, classes are still a small class of about 10 to 15 kids, right?
16 somewhere.
If we had the amount of teachers to keep it at like 10 would be great. Could they be in class every day?
That would be,
We've
That,
we talked a little bit about that with Mr. Plowman already. Should that be a possibility? of
Yeah, that's-
something part of that MOU.
to me, would be the ultimate perfect way to do it, because they're the kids that are struggling that we really need to focus on. And forgive me if I am not focusing on the smarter kids, but they're the ones that really need the in-class more than other kids. So I really like to, if we could, try to get those kids in class every single day.
There would be ways to serve both our RSP and our SDC students if they're attending 4 days a week. It might start to impact those numbers. And again, ladies, I apologize for my outburst, very much so.
It's okay.
This is an emotional topic.
I
That's okay.
apologize for that, because if you talk to the teachers and you ask them, do you want to be in school 5 days a week to give the best instruction possible? 95% of us are going to say, yeah, I'm there to do that. But in light of the safety situations, that takes that off the table.
Well, I
for
just,
most.
right, but I don't think it's way out there either. I mean, Orange County's doing it. You know, and they're way a bigger district than we are. And our numbers are way low. I'm just looking at it like, it's a possible thing that can happen.
And we
That's
are
what I'm
going to
looking at.
have less students because some parents will choose
Not
to
to
keep
Right, and we're gonna
their
give them that
kids
option,
at
yes,
home.
if you don't wanna keep your kids at home, go ahead, or do the distant learning.
And Orange County's skyrocketing right now.
Hey,
with
yeah,
their
but they're still
numbers.
going that way, I know, that's what I'm saying, it's not like being way out in the field, because you got a big district that went, regular school, with no mask and no, social distancing.
And I don't have direct information, Mrs. Gaines, like you were talking about on the phone, but I just have teachers who are emailing me. They're texting during your presentation going, they voted just last night to go
Okay.
strictly distance learning, and that was both Lancaster and Palmdale. But I'm only going from what people are telling me. I don't have direct
That could
information.
very well be
But yeah,
true.
one of the things I would like to do is as soon as the board has a decision, and if we're going to some non-traditional model, is to pull together some of my most veteran special ed teachers in both RSP and SDC, along with Mrs. Gaines and Mrs. Taylor, and Mrs. Hargis, and talk about, okay, how can we meet the needs of our students and the requirements of our IEPs? Because I don't have those answers. They're the experts
Right.
in doing that.
Right.
But I envision because of the numbers, like you said, they would have the ability of possibly attending all 4 days that students are at school.
But you
Yeah.
talk about like, the students that need it the most, really K through fifth are the ones that are more vulnerable. No, I know, I'm just saying though, I mean, if you're gonna do special ed, talk about K through fifth. I mean, they're the ones that really need to be in front of an instructor and, being in school every day. I'd rather see everybody, but I'm just saying that,
I know.
that's another vulnerable, grade level.
I agree, but at this point, I think we need to look at, we gotta get something just started.
Right,
And I think that my personal opinion is, let's go with like model 4 with, like I said, with the special ed. For those parents who do not want to send their kids to school, if we can figure out some way of doing the distance learning for them.
yeah, we talked about that.
And that's something else that we talked about earlier. And then we're gonna be visiting this again in September anyways.
Right, that's.
And then after that, it's gonna be again in November and until this thing, where we end up back in school for 5 days. I don't see us going a whole year with this model.
Of all the plans, I like Plan 4 the best. If it was me, that's the plan. If I had to choose, half-time school,
My
that's
personal
the
one
one that I
is
would choose.
return 5 days and go back to normality.
Right.
But I don't see it happening right now.
We could readdress it
And,
later.
well, we will be readdressing it later. It's gonna be constantly, I say, we're gonna be addressing this thing once a month. But we need to start somewhere.
Mr. Bender?
A lot to think
I
about.
pass, how's that?
That's not an option, Mr. President.
The pass, but where's the pass? Climate, climate. This is tough. This is really tough. I mean, I want to return to school for 5 days, traditional school. But how do we separate the children? How do we maintain the 3 feet?
Something possible.
You can't,
And not only that,
You can't.
we're gonna.
How do we bus them? You can't.
Yeah, if you go 5 days a week, you just bus them, just like regular.
Yeah, but you can't put them on a bus.
And
No, those are just guidelines, they're
Oh,
not
I know,
mandatory.
I know.
Well, he's asking, so.
Yeah,
I'm just
That's what I
kinda
want to make sure.
Yeah.
Now, they're all just guidelines, right?
Mhm.
This is what we think you might want to do.
And I just want to say one more thing to this board that I neglected to say in my presentation that was like on the tip of my tongue. I want you to keep in mind also that regardless how good we get at distancing on buses, distancing in the classrooms, distancing in the cafeterias, the libraries, whatever, imagine your middle and high school students the minute the bell rings for passing period.
Or even the kindergartners, how are you gonna keep them
Everything
separated?
right out the door.
Yeah.
I mean, once they, there's gonna be
Yeah.
no social distancing.
Well, and that's why I
There's
say
nothing-
stagger when you have, you know.
Yeah.
There's
they just-
nothing I can do there. I can
just
put
tell
all
them,
the
just make
X's
sure that you wear your
outside.
mask, 'cause
They're gonna be playing football, they're gonna be playing basketball, they're gonna be doing.
gonna have boyfriend, girlfriend out
Hugging
there.
and everything else that they do.
Yeah.
So this is tough. I do like Mr. Quillman's suggestions. Plan 5 and 4. Plan 4 would, but I think we should return to school, full-time. And let's look at this in November.
I agree, because I think we can make, decisions at that time too, and we might have.
We
not
know
even
we
have
get a
choice.
decline in November.
Yeah.
Sickness, children get sick right after Thanksgiving through December into January. But also, I want to protect the teachers. We got to figure out, if we do this, we've got to put protection up for them. We talk about putting glass in the offices. Is there something we can put
Well,
at
I
the
think they
desk?
talked about the shields, they can wear the shields.
Yeah, but that's uncomfortable.
Well, I mean, that's what the county, is delivering or whatever.
But they're not delivering that many shields
For
for,
teachers,
On the desk.
for enough for all teachers,
Oh.
but maybe
They don't
for
move very much.
medically fragile,
Yeah, they're moving around.
you know.
Well, they have to stay away, so they may have to sit behind their desk more than normal. It might be a little bit harder.
That works, but
Certain grade level works, some don't. Okay,
little ones, that's not gonna work so good.
okay.
but you have the instructional aides in the lower grades, right?
For a period of time.
Just for a period of time.
Yeah,
They rotate.
and they aren't even consistent, they're here and there, they're kind of,
Well, how about if we just do a quick show of hands on?
Wait, we're not done yet. We need-
Can I go?
Yeah.
Yeah,
We
I'm
got it, we
sorry.
still got one more member that wants to,
Or did I speak enough, Mr. Quellen? Am I done? With all the unknowns and uncertainties out there, I'm a firm believer in you gotta walk before you run. Okay? And I'm just not talking about uncertainties with COVID. I'm talking about uncertainties in operations as well. Yeah, okay, we all know we've been talking about the issues of spacing out and masks and all that stuff. We also gotta look at, are we postured to operationally support the mission, okay? And this is gonna be unpopular, so sorry, Gary, and your folks, but in the past, we didn't have enough custodians to even keep up with cleaning of rooms under regular circumstances.
that's true.
Honestly, I mean, floors would be vacuumed once a week because they didn't have enough people. Not necessarily their fault. I don't know if their processes are lean. I don't know if they are effective and efficient. I don't know that piece because I really didn't pay attention to it. I just know half the time I was taking out my own trash and half the time I was vacuuming my own floors. And that's under normal circumstances. We have it plussed up. We're requiring all this additional work. Do we have we've got a lot of acreage here with minimum people. Do all these leads, when you talk to them, could they get the job done?
Well, we got that $50,000 machine though now, which is probably eliminates 2 or
But-
3 of the custodians.
But you have to have
But
somebody
a
else.
custodian still has to operate it.
Yeah,
I understand we are doing away with a lot of the events that took up a lot of their time. But when you talk to the leads, did they think they could get to the finish line with what they have?
They felt that, Mr. Tanksy, that's a great question. In talking to the 4 leads, they felt that they could get through with additional support from, using the new machines. Also, one of the plans that they liked, the ones who were parents liked very much the ABABD or the ABDAB because they felt that it was very important that their children get a day or two in front of the teacher before the distance learning. But they felt that as far as to help them to prevent the cross-contamination, they had a tendency to like Plan 5, the AA, the BB, and the distance day on Friday to help them, that would lessen the stress on them, and also depending on where the students eat. Are they going to eat in their classrooms? Then that would, there's an element of risk there versus eating in the cafeteria. How many in the cafeteria at one time? So there were different key pointers that they brought up to me that I didn't necessarily had already thought about all of them. Some of them, yes, but that's why I really valued talking to them because they had some very good points that we need to consider.
Okay, so I think we can agree, and I think they would agree with the amount of people they have and the amount of classrooms and the amount of work that has to be done, that's a potential point of failure. And that's a huge one because that's part of safety and cleanliness. Buses, we've already beat to death. That is a potential point of failure. Mr. Plowman alluded to that some teachers on a 5-day may not feel comfortable coming back to school. What do we do there? That's a potential point of failure. I think by walking before we run, I would pick Plan 4, ABD, but I would stipulate that every 9 weeks, every quarter, we relook at it. Oh yeah, 9 weeks from now, and I think 9 weeks is a good thing because it gives them a block, and we can see how the kids are doing. It gives us more data on are they learning, how are their grades. At the first quarter, we can make a decision: do we go to 5 days or do we hybrid something else? And we continue on until we get to that point. Right. But we've got to have gates set up. It's important for the community to know when we're going to make these decisions. So we need to draw lines in the sand. On this day, we're going to decide based on the data we have. It'll be imperative for us to get the same inputs from the same people, but we've got to set the gates. We've got to keep people informed. That's one of the biggest beasts. We don't keep people informed.
I think if we wait a whole quarter before we assess that, that's going to be too long. We really should do it like mid-quarter.
Maybe when
the deficiency notices would come out.
What is it? Progress reports.
Right, progress reports.
However we do it, that's just my put.
Because we need to put something in place for the end of the quarter. So we have to assess it before that time. So we have to assess it mid-quarter.
Whatever the line in the sand is, somebody could pick that, but we need to pick a line in the sand and say this, based on this data, what we have, how successful the students are doing, how successful those points of failures that I pointed out is doing, right? We can go forward.
That still doesn't address, though, their ability to clean in between the two,
But it will give us a better idea.
The AABBD is similar to Plan 4, but for the custodial staff.
I think AABB would be better because you said it's 72 hours. So if they sprayed it Monday, they wouldn't have to spray it back until Wednesday.
I think I actually misspoke. I think it's 48 hours. What it is it's an ionizing system, and it sprays, and then you spray it over the top. It actually wraps around a table like this, and so it actually cleans the bottom as well.
So are we suggesting under an AABB, we would not clean daily?
I would say
clean daily
no matter what.
I would say no because you got the same students in the classes.
It doesn't matter. what you carry in, what spores you carry in. We don't know what's
Everything
there.
changes every single
So
hour.
I would think it would,
Still required to be done daily.
so that takes out the whole
Yeah.
AABB argument. That takes out the argument. So now we're back to what's best for the students and the teaching style to get the students the knowledge, because that's the big piece of it. I would also suggest on that is, once we get all these processes in place, whatever we decide it's gonna be, there's gonna be processes. The cabinet's gonna go forward. I suggest we do walkthroughs, or we do a dry run from the bus to the end of the school day. And we look at it from the student's eyes, the teacher's eyes, and the CSE DA's eyes. Now, I don't know what that entails. Hey, we need some volunteers. We're gonna ride the bus. We're gonna go get our foreheads checked. We're gonna go to our classroom. We're gonna stand on the same, hey, let's go to the bathroom. Let's see how that looks from the student's eyes. Because then we may see policies in our plan before the school starts and we don't look like monkeys on a football.
Well, when I was subbing at Tropico, I would have kids that needed to use the restroom, and all the restrooms would be locked except for one way on the other side of campus. So there was one restroom open for all the students to use anyway, because they locked all the other restrooms. So,
But that's something we would find in our walk around. I mean, we need to dry run this thing because there's gonna be stuff we missed. We think we've got the game locked, and we don't wanna find out after school started, and then we're scratching our head, how are we gonna solve that problem? And it's just chaos for everybody. We gotta put everybody as much ease as we can when we start the school year. So I think we need to do dry runs, whether that takes, us coming and getting on a bus and go from start to finish. How does the day look from a student's eyes, from a teacher's eyes, and from the staff, other staff's eyes? How does it look? I don't think that's unreasonable. It's gonna take up time, yes, but I think that's something we need to do. And that's my philosophy. I would go with Plan 4, ABD, for those reasons.
Okay. I had the question of, do we have extra janitor, what do you call it?
Substitute?
Substitute, yes, there you go.
Do we have a ready supply of substitutes?
Yes.
No.
I think we
My
just,
honest answer is no. We don't have a good pool, a good solid pool.
I was just,
I
do we
think we
have the
just,
funds if we needed to? Manny?
Yeah, I mean, maybe.
Well, I'm just looking at, especially in the janitorial area, we may need to put one extra person on each campus just to help clean.
So I think, yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you. If I can order in my head, if I could have money for custodians right away, where would I put them first? Tropico, West Park, High School.
Yeah, and
Absolutely. And, I know that violates some of the assumptions that are around here a little bit.
I don't,
Um,
but at this
But
point,
it would be where that would be my allocation. And acknowledging that there is a shortage, I think one of the things we're doing is putting together some tools to try and help them. The principals have been assigned the task of managing the custodians. Principals aren't necessarily natural managers of custodians and custodial schedules, so we need to support them in helping their custodians. So Raleigh and I have been working on trying to put those things together right now. We're not ready yet, we're not done yet, but hopefully
now,
in advance of the school year, we'll have them ready and we can provide
we
trainings for principals and lead custodians especially in implementation, so they feel supported.
and that's another thing on the lead custodians. I don't know what the PD says, but I've seen what some of them do. And it's not custodial. Okay, so maybe lead custodians need to lead by example and do custodial stuff.
Yeah.
First and foremost, the scheduling's easy. And if that's the only difference between a lead custodian and a regular custodian is scheduling people and ordering supplies, I think that could be done at a different level.
I think you had one position open though, right? I think you just posted a custodial position. So that's in the work.
Maintenance.
What was the maintenance?
Grounds.
Oh, grounds.
We posted grounds. We,
Can you use the grounds for the custodial?
no, they're not interchangeable just for the structure of the contract. The the problem is we have a lot of gaps, right? And so it's where do we plug the hole first? The grounds, I think we're down to 2. And so this would be this would go back to 3, where they used to have 5 or 7 or something. And then maintenance is down to, depending on how you cut it, and assign people into that category, it's down to 3 or 4 positions that aren't all filled. And custodians, if they also are separating, it's where's the priority lay? It's a hard one to answer. And I think our custodians will do the best they can. They absolutely will, and we'll do the best we can to support them, because cleaning the school is essential right now.
Yeah.
But so is all the stuff we're talking about in terms of getting direct instruction in front of children, right? So it's a challenge. And we don't have all the money that we need. We do recover pretty well, right? Our projected fund balance is growing nicely and quickly to where it needs to be sustainable. But at the same time, we're having all these deferrals, and so to say we can maybe accept a little bit slower ending fund balance growth, maybe we could, to accommodate some of these things we want to accommodate. That will set up other challenges because we're not going to have the cash flow that we need to be able to just make payroll. There's so many moving parts right now that it's hard for me to answer your question honestly and
No,
accurately.
that's why I asked.
I'm not trying to.
No, you're doing
Yes,
just fine.
is here, but
So,
And your human resources department can look at efficiencies and lean procedures and see if there's like steps that can be saved and time can be saved in that arena.
for custodians.
And I truly believe there is. I think I think it could be done smarter, a different approach, and cut out, the routes can be done different, where it saves a lot of time, and that time is what there's missing. I don't think it's motivation. I think it's time.
Yeah.
And maybe they need help to look at their processes and figure out, map them out and say, hey, we can cut these steps and which is more important and stuff like that. And you have a department that can do that for you. I believe.
The custodian that's working in the evening is more effective at cleaning larger areas of the campus than the custodian that's working in the day when their staff and students are present. So some of the practices that we have don't necessarily make sense. We want to keep as many custodians in the evening as possible, especially now. And so we're going to want to focus on that.
by having the grab and go lunches, there's going to be a lot more trash, period.
Right, and so we'll have to setting student standards and expectations a priority, right? I mean, we need to make sure that everyone is on the same team and we're all throwing our own trash away. That's not just the custodian's job.
You'll have
And
less
students
kids
will comply.
on campus at the time, so you'll be able to keep a little better track of it.
Less cleaning in the kitchen.
So at this point then, I would like to make a motion that we accept plan 4.
I would like to reverse that motion, however you reverse it, and I'd like to make a motion that we accept Plan 8.
Okay, you can put that out there.
Okay, so
And you
do
second,
I hear a motion?
you made it.
Okay, do I hear a second?
I think that, going with Plan 4 so that we can, assess where our weaknesses are and where our needs are, may be a good idea, but to readdress this within a month after school starts, and maybe return to traditional school then, so that we can have some time to make sure that things are moving in the direction they need to go. So,
I think, Madam President, if I'm not mistaken, you had a motion, but you do not have a second?
Right, I didn't have a second.
Okay,
No
There was
second,
not a
so it
second,
died
so-
for no
Yes.
second.
Yes, it does, yeah.
okay.
so I
So do I hear a
motion that
motion?
we take, well, he said Plan 4, but I
Plan
want
4 with the caveat of
of
reassessing.
readdressing it within 4 to
When's-
5 weeks.
When's the progress report? 4.5 weeks?
That's first quarter. At the end of first quarter is the progress report, correct?
No.
There's a progress
Mid-quarter.
report. it might be on the calendar after 4 weeks, but keep in mind that first week is only a 2-day week.
Right.
Yeah, it's usually either at the 4 or 5 week mark.
And
So
Keep
I would say
in mind-
let's readdress it in 5 weeks.
okay, but we also have to give the teachers, once they send that out, they've got to compile that data and get it to us. So just because the progress reports go out doesn't mean they're going to have that information to us. So,
When we get the progress reports, it'll be 9 weeks before we can make the decision.
right,
The way the meetings fall and everything else, and the information that we'll have to go back out for.
and that's the point. That's why we need to start at 5 weeks and then give the teachers
The
some
decision will
time
be
to
made
get
at
some things.
9 weeks or the first quarter.
Right before.
At the end of the first quarter, then we'll readdress it to returning 5 days a week.
And so
Or back it off.
Right.
Anything can happen with that.
Right.
just for clarity in the minutes, Dr. Robinson, you're talking 5 weeks from the onset of August 12th, correct?
Yes.
Not from today?
No,
Right.
Okay.
from 5 weeks from the beginning of school.
I'll second her motion.
Second by Gutierrez. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You can abstain if you wish.
No, I'm not in favor.
I'm not in favor either. So it's 3 ayes and 2 nays. At 10:13. Okay, next on the agenda is Title IX, new regulations in Ontario.
Fall asleep.
Huh?
It's not starting to fall asleep. That's not that.
I have to drive to Bakersfield tonight.
I'm standing here. So, we have some new regulations that are coming into
place starting, they need to be in place by August 14th. So, and so Title IX's been around for a long time, started in 1972, and it was started based on sex discrimination between men and women. Everybody was supposed to have the same rights, and so now it's kind of come into where it's included national origin, gay and lesbian, transgender, all of those fit into that now. And so there can not be any discrimination in the educational setting for any federally funded program. And so, like I said, why is it important? Because it gives everybody equal footing, regardless of, what language you speak, what your national origin is, in those federally funded programs. And it's important. Gender discrimination in the athletic system is kind of what it comes down to. Now, gosh, I'm getting tired too.
That's okay, you're doing good, go ahead.
So goodness. All right, so Title IX, it's between men and women as far as sports go. And so as far as they really are measure it in participation. So you take the ratio of boys to girls that you have in the school system, and if it's an equal ratio, then you're on the right track. If girls are continuing to, participate in those sports, and then also taking into effect what their interests are as far as sports go. So if you said, as far as wrestling, okay, well, we're going to have a boys and, girls, everybody's going to do wrestling, but you don't have too many girls that say, oh, I don't want to do that. I'd rather do lacrosse. So you would want to make sure that everybody has an equal representation. And so if you look at from 1972, where only 7% of girls nationwide participated in high school sports, we now have over 3 million, or close to half of the females nationwide that do participate in sports. And these are just, some fun facts that I found about women in sports. 1973, it was not separated between men and women as far as tennis went. And so Billie Jean King defeated Bobby Riggs. Some of these were interesting. I didn't realize that it was, in such recent time. If you look down to WNBA started in 1997. I thought, wow, I thought it was, way back a long time ago that it started. But first basketball championship, soccer team wins the first World Cup. 2008, Danica Patrick was the first woman to win an IndyCar race. So, and then I believe it's 1984, they tried to repeal Title IX. And in 1988, President Reagan said, no, we're gonna keep it in place and make sure that those rights are there for everybody. And so these are new regulations. So that kind of gives you a little bit of history of where Title IX came from. So now Title IX is adding some regulations to it where sexual harassment is now going to be part of Title IX. So sexual harassment, quid pro quo, which just means from employee to student. So if there was a teacher that said, I'll give you an A if you come and give me a hug before you leave every day. So that's kind of what that means. Sexual assault, dating violence, and stalking.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Oh, goodness. All right.
We understand.
And so really we want to, the whole reason for our presentation and really wanting to make sure that everybody understands the new regulations is because there's new board policy that of course comes along with this, but Gavin is not going to have that out until I believe it's next week, the 23rd of July, and all of these have to be in place by August 14th. There will only be one board meeting in order to approve those board policies. So I really want you to make sure that, when you see those board policies, you go, okay, I understand what all of that means. And so, all of these activities that take place within the school setting are all now covered by Title IX. Most of them probably were covered, but we do have some new things in there. But anything that is part of anything that's federally funded for school programs is covered by Title IX. So the focus of the new regulations for sexual harassment is really they want school districts to make sure that they are taking action. So you can't, if you hear about something, you can't just ignore it and go, oh, well, that doesn't really affect me. That doesn't work. So that's, how school districts, tend to get themselves in trouble is by non-action. So that's really the focus, whether it's alleged or confirmed. It needs that, whatever incident that occurred, it has to happen within an event that the school district was primarily responsible for. So if it happened on a school campus during the school day, we definitely would have jurisdiction over that. If it happened at a football game, we would have jurisdiction. If it happened at a party 2 blocks away, then we do not. So that's, and so this is just, it kind of goes along with being a mandated reporter. Anybody that finds anything out about any kind of a sexual harassment is obligated to report that. I am the Title IX coordinator for the district, so they would report that to their supervisor. Supervisor could report that to me. Now, one of the big differences between a sexual harassment investigation and a Title IX sexual harassment is it has to be in writing for it to become a Title IX. So that is something that's important. But, for example, if somebody said, oh, hey, I had this incident occur at a party, 2 blocks away on a Saturday, but they told maybe a paraeducator that was working with them in the classroom, that paraeducator is still obligated to let somebody know that that occurred, so that, we still might, there might still be some counseling that we could offer to that student, or we would say, hey, you know what, that's a crime and that needs to be reported to the sheriff's department, but it wouldn't be our investigation to conduct, but we would still, offer our services to that student. So, and so, here's the process that we need to follow. Currently, when we have any kind of a Title IX, it goes on our uniform complaint form. And so I participated in a training a few weeks ago. It was an online training. But Schools Legal is also going to provide a training, but not till the 21st of August. So currently, we're going to continue using our uniform complaint form until we find some more specifics as to what would be a better form to use. So we need to have some way for people to file those claims. Uniform complaints, those are in all of the offices district-wide. They can be found in my office, and I believe Sally has those as well. Our response protocols, and like I mentioned, a formal complaint, versus a report. And then we have to determine, does it fit our criteria of a sexual harassment complaint? So there's just a lot more moving parts to this investigation process. And only a formal complaint, something that's in writing, triggers that Title IX response. And something else that's interesting as far as when we get our formal complaints and we do our due diligence and we figure out, we start our investigation, we have to be very careful about being, what's the word? Nonpartisan is, impartial, thank you. That's great. So we have to be impartial. We have to make sure that everybody has their rights, and within that process, it can be very lengthy. So if I'm the investigator and I investigate, I can't immediately say, okay, well, perpetrator, I'm sending you home because we think that you did this. It actually, I would have to. Anybody could give me information. For example, if they visited a doctor, if they visited a psychiatrist, they could give me all that information, and it's a 10-day process. So whatever I receive from a party, I have to share with both parties. And so then I would, from that, then I write a summary and I say, okay, this is my findings, and then I give it to somebody along with all of these. There's different people that are now involved. So in just a regular investigation at a school site, you would just necessarily have the site administrators would conduct that. But so now we have to, get additional people trained so that we, can be in compliance with this. But back to, I'm the investigator, so I write a summary, and then I give my summary to a decision maker. That's not me. Somebody else has to be the impartial decision maker.
Is that an employee?
And so the decision maker, looks at all the evidence and says, okay, well, this is what I think. Well, say, somebody doesn't like that, then they go to the appeals person. So now you have a third person that's involved in the whole situation. So it's a lot of additional.
When did you get to
the
sheriff's, or that next step, is it after we all go in agreement?
At any point, if there's a crime involved, we certainly can get the sheriff involved, and then they, would say, okay, this is what we need to do. But, For example, if somebody says, oh gosh, that person's stalking me, well, then I guess we have to somehow prove that this person stalks this person, around the 200 building and all that kind of stuff.
So who's gonna be doing that, the decision person or the appeals person?
Well, so what the investigator does is, I guess I would try to investigate that kind of thing, what makes it that this person is actually stalking you?
We got
Versus
experience.
that's just where they hang out after second period every day, So it's just, it's gonna be kind of a learning process for us.
How long is the whole process?
No, yeah, you didn't hear me say you have the experience from before on investigating.
Oh, yeah, I think as administrators, we've investigated hundreds of,
Right.
thousands of different situations, so it's just kind of, making sure that we dot all of our i's and cross our t's and make sure that we're, doing what we need to do, so. All right.
So you have 10 days to finish your investigation, right?
No, there's no set day as, like, if I was doing the investigation, I would try to get it done as quickly as I could.
Right.
But then I have to share with both parties
Right.
any information I receive, and they have 10 days.
Oh, they have 10 days.
Now-
And then the judge has how long to make a decision?
Well, and there's no definite timeline, but, now that you mention, it does sound like a court of law, like this is what we have to do. At the community college level, which we don't necessarily have to, or not community college, but at the college level, they are required to have live hearings. At K-12, we're not required to have a live hearing. We can if we want to, and it wouldn't, but Title IX can go all the way up to the Office of Civil Rights. So you really have to be careful. And like I said, you want to make sure you dot your i's and cross your t's. There could be civil remedies with Title IX, so, and the uniform compliance process, so yeah. So we still have some, things that we are going to be putting in place, and we'll just, hope that we don't have too many of those. And that's kind of what I was just talking about, was the independent roles. It cannot be the same person. It has to be 3 different people. All right, and all of our requirements have to be implemented by August 14th.
So you need an action item on
You know what, that was, so my presentation was just informational.
it? Okay. Right, okay. Right. Thank you. Cabinet. Policy maintenance schedule to provide revised Title IX board policy by the week ending of July 23rd. Action item, Ms. Gaines?
Letter D.
Oh, approved to waive second reading. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Of board policy Title IX in order to put in place prior to August 14, 2020. Ms. Gaines.
Yes, basically, Leanne said it, but what we're asking here is for you to understand that there would be no opportunity for a second reading. We haven't got the board policy yet. We will have the board policy ready for a first and final approval on August 5th. But we want you to be aware that you're waiving the second reading of that board policy. There's just not enough time. It is not an error on our part. It is, we don't have the board policy yet.
Right. I will make a motion that we waive the second reading as long as we have enough time to look over the document prior to our voting for it.
Okay, motion by Kateras, second
A
by
second.
Bender. All in favor?
Aye.
First review and reading of board policies.
Yes, just want to highlight a couple of these for you. Board policy 0430, comprehensive local plan for special education. The reason that we select option 3, it's very clear for us, we belong to the Kern County SELPA. We're not our own SELPA, so we fall into the category of option 3 for that one. Under Administrative Reg 1312.3, Uniform Complaint Procedures, we are option 2, which allows for anyone who is going through this process to appeal to the Board of Trustees. And that was a decision made that you want to be able to hear the appeals. So that falls under option 2. And with the Williams Uniform Complaint Procedures, deleting E on 1312.4, that is the recommendation of the California School Boards Association. The entire E document is deleted.
Okay.
Number 8.
Okay, so curriculum and instruction, that accept the quarterly report, April, May, and June 2020 on the Williams Uniform Complaint under Education Code 35186. Ms. Hargis?
We do not have any Williams.
Okay. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion that we accept the quarterly report.
I second that.
Robinson, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Personnel items. Approve the following listed personnel items. Ms. Gaines?
Yes, we just, as you can see, we've had some resignations, we have some hiring. Most of the teacher positions that have been hired are special education positions. And we also have some stipends for prep buyouts for health and psychology and sociology. And by buying out the preps of certain teachers who volunteered to teach these classes and who are qualified to teach these classes, it prevents us from having to hire additional teachers for maybe 1 or 2 electives at the high school.
We'll make a motion that we accept personnel as written.
Harris, second by
Second.
Dr. Robinson. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I understand you do my life being on the list.
Okay. Got that? 1 abstain and 4 yeas. Approve resolution 2021-01 to reduce hours for 1 classified ASB clerk position. Ms. Gaines?
Yes, I just want the Board of Trustees to understand that this reduction in hours for this position has nothing to do with COVID-19. It is strictly based on lack of work for this position at Tropico Middle School. I do want to let you know that we are in dialogue with Mr. Jones. We met with him a couple of weeks ago, HR and I did, in trying to come up with another solution to provide this employee with 8 hours of work, just not in that category of ASB coordinator there. So maybe she would do 2 hours in ASB and possibly 6 hours in something else. So I want that to be clear.
We should have plenty of work to do.
There's cleaning to
There's
do.
a lot of cleaning to do.
I'll make a motion that we accept.
Harris, second by
Second.
Dr. Robinson. All in favor?
Aye.
At 10:36.
And I move that we adjourn because I have to go to Bakersfield.
Okay, Dr. Robinson, second by
Thanks, Lynn.
Nancy. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. At 10:36.
Oh.
And may I just say, all the questions that